Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Yes, the president pointed at the scarlet stomach on the sensor screen and said, "That's it. But it's very troublesome to deal with this thing. I haven't seen any obvious weaknesses so far. To solve it, we need to destroy the entire planet." Destroy the planet. Chen Ming looked around and saw that there were at least 5 level 6 psychics sitting here. It shouldn't be a problem to destroy a planet-sized scarlet creature. The president saw the meaning of Chen Ming's action and explained, "It's not just about solving the stomach. There are also problems inside the stomach. The scarlet invasion started from the rift, and the rift is inside the stomach. We are now worried that killing the scarlet stomach will affect the continued expansion of the rift inside, so we don't dare to do it directly. It just so happens that there is nothing to develop in this galaxy now. Although there are many galaxies next to it, there are not many people either. The impact should not be great in a short time, so we will stay for a while. And it takes time for people to come here, even for me." This is true. Chen Ming did not deny it. It was very efficient to gather so many top psychics in 2 hours. Although it was still useless, the expansion speed of Scarlet was very terrifying. It was impossible to easily deal with it without affecting the space rift. Even if a level 6 psychic was called over, it was impossible to deal with Scarlet. It was not a complete loss. The main reason was that there was no way to deal with Scarlet without damaging the structure of the space rift. Now we are considering whether there are suitable means to deal with it through cooperation. The 3 space gaps are there. It is impossible to repair them all. Scarlet has already locked our position. But at least we can't let it continue to expand, right? The next time Scarlet invades, there will definitely be more troubles if the gaps are bigger. Things like faster infection will definitely be difficult to deal with." After listening to the president's words, Chen Ming nodded and said, "That's the truth. So many people are sitting here waiting?" A psychic present retorted, "We are also thinking of ways. The president has just said that before those researchers give the data, even if we want to do it, we can't guarantee the stability of the space. If the space is damaged, you come. Forget it, just ignore what I said." When thinking of Chen Ming's ability and his connection with Nwupiing, as well as everything Chen Ming has done in dimensional infection, no one except Chen Ming's old acquaintances is qualified to blame Chen Ming. If it weren't for Chen Ming, the dimensional invasion might have started since the last time. Similarly, no one would say that it was Chen Ming who caused the mechanical race to destroy the destruction core and release the destructive power, causing the space to be damaged. Even if there was no Chen Ming, given the relationship between the mechanical race and the Empire, they would sooner or later use this thing on the Empire. The destruction core caused by Chen Ming was used in the core galaxy of the mechanical race's star field. The destruction core used by the mechanical race on its own initiative may not be used anywhere. Everyone present is not a fool. Although they are usually pampered in high positions and are a little bit overwhelmed by Chen Ming's ridicule, they will never really argue with Chen Ming. As for the solution, there is indeed no way, and it is indeed the same as what this psychic said. There is no way to guarantee safety. And they can only wait for the response of those researchers. After all, in the face of the Scarlet invasion, the priority is of course psychics with strong enough combat power. There are other part-time psychics or psychics whose psychic power is auxiliary, such as the psychic Fan Chao that Chen Ming knows, who are unlikely to come to dangerous places. Except Chen Ming himself and the president. When the profession is not suitable and the things to consider involve other aspects, there is really not much that can be done. Chen Ming turned his eyes away from the psychic just now with some boredom and asked, "Speaking of which, how effective are the weapons of the Gorilla Devourer model that we made before? Are they not good?" The president said, "It has not been put into service on a large scale yet, but some of them have been installed on the space station next to the Triple Rift, which can be regarded as curbing the spread of infection for a period of time. Otherwise, it is impossible that only 20 people were injured and no one died." The silent alloy protective suit is also very important. Although it can't last too long, it can at least last for a period of time. Can it be suppressed later? The president nodded. The Scarlet is expanding too fast, and the level 6 psychics are coming too slowly, so I'm the only one who can come here first. Is there no one watching the rift? It's just the monthly shift, and the last person left early. I'm the first one to come here, but I can't solve the problem by myself. The repair method you taught me is indeed useful, but the space rift can't be repaired this time. It's not just the scarlet, something is stuck in the rift. Stuck there. Chen Ming immediately thought of the body he found on Gaia. Maybe there's one here too. Just when he wanted to ask more precisely, the president suddenly raised his hand and said, "Wait a minute." I saw psychic fluctuations flashing around him, and another person was brought here by the president. It's the psychic minister. Chen Ming immediately greeted him and said, "You're here. I just happened to have something to find you." The psychic minister nodded to Chen Ming and asked, "I heard from the president about your situation?" "Yes, but it's not just that. Let's deal with the things here first." "Okay." The minister nodded again and asked the other people in the captain's room the same question as Chen Ming. "What's the situation?" The president repeated the steps of showing the pictures from the command room received by the captain's room and said, "From what you can see, the problem is not the stomach, but the space crack inside the stomach. We are still waiting for the data of the evacuated researchers. They don't have professional equipment at hand. We have to wait for the new equipment to be adjusted before we can give an answer." The psychic minister asked in confusion, "President, you can't be sure of the condition of the space? Do you have to wait for other researchers to give data?" "I can be sure, but I can't give accurate data, and it's impossible to give an estimate based on the abilities of the people present. The probability of problems is too high. We must have accurate psychic data so that everyone can use appropriate means to solve the problem according to their own psychic conditions. If you put in too much effort, the cracks may be damaged and enlarged. I can indeed deal with scarlet, and the treatment method has no effect on the space rift itself, but you have to consider the sequelae of my method of dealing with scarlet. I can help explain this." Chen Ming took the initiative to say, "Most space methods such as space tearing cannot completely eliminate scarlet. As long as the rift is still there, scarlet cannot be eradicated, so the president can only replicate his previous method of dealing with scarlet. Throw it out. I don't know where it will be thrown, and I don't know if it can come back." The president supplemented Chen Ming and asked, "Isn't it back?" Chen Ming shrugged. Shoulder. "Yes, the one thrown out by the previous president is with me, and I have killed it. If we use the space ability to throw this stomach to other dimensions now, it may come back again in a few decades, which is only a temporary solution. Anyway, the loss of the entire galaxy is not big, so why not find a way to cure the root of the scarlet, and the root of the rift will be dealt with later." A psychic sitting next to him suddenly proposed, "How about throwing it into a black hole? Isn't it said that the black hole dimension already exists?" The president had already discussed this issue with Chen Ming, who confirmed the existence of the black hole dimension. To do this, we must first confirm the spatial coordinates of the black hole dimension. The danger of the black hole may be greater than that of the scarlet, but it does not have such a strong transmission power. Secondly, what if the scarlet becomes a stronger monster in the black hole, or vice versa? For example, if the nightmare of the face has the characteristics of a scarlet creature, then the trouble of dealing with it. Then forget it. The psychic who proposed it shut up. Chen Ming took the opportunity to say, "So other people should first consider whether there is a solution. If not, then consider the president's ability." After a moment of silence, the data did not seem to be delivered in a short time. So Chen Ming clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention and said, "No way, right? Then I'll handle it. What are you going to do?" The psychic minister had just asked half a sentence when Chen Ming disappeared in the captain's room, leaving half a sentence that could not reach his ears. The president was very familiar with Chen Ming's approach and projected the image of the spacecraft sensor on the table in front of him. It can be seen that after Chen Ming disappeared in the captain's room, he appeared in the galaxy's cosmic environment and put on his biological armor again. After several rapid flashes, Chen Ming approached the source of the scarlet. Blue and purple light patterns began to flash on his body, and the psychic fluctuations on his right arm condensed to the limit, and he punched the scarlet stomach that was spewing filth. The power of the phase burst after being compressed to the extreme. It was like a giant net coming out from the inside, enveloping the scarlet stomach and everything it released, annihilating and erasing it. With just one punch, the entire planet-sized stomach was completely ruptured. Chen Ming couldn't blow up a proper planet, but it was no problem to blow up a planet-sized scarlet creature. At this time, the psychic minister pointed at Chen Ming on the projection screen and asked, "I don't understand," so I asked, "Is this the ability to control machinery?" Huh, God knows. The president looked like he knew nothing, and the other psychics fell silent after watching Chen Ming's performance at the moment. They all had the ability to defeat the scarlet stomach, but it was absolutely impossible to deal with it so cleanly, to remove all the scarlet substances without a trace, and at the same time not affect the cracks in the stomach at all. This kind of exquisite control of power is not something that everyone can do, and not everyone needs to learn. But in short, the planet-sized scarlet stomach has completely disappeared in the universe in the blink of an eye. Chen Ming also returned to the spaceship a few minutes later. He casually threw a corpse wrapped in a blue-purple film on the floor of the conference room. Okay, it's solved. This is the thing that is stuck in the crack and can't be repaired. I have already repaired the spatial crack. The Minister of Psychic Power immediately asked, "This corpse? It's missing a stomach, just like the missing eyes on my side. It looks like the brainwashed psychic himself, but it's someone else's body that has changed into this. Any clues?" "No, the handwriting is very clean, and the dead body has no connection with the brainwashed psyker. You can each take a look and see what's best. If you can't, I'll take the body and dispose of it. The scarlet in the corpse has deep roots. If you don't handle it properly, you will be in trouble." The president looked at the corpse and listened to Chen Ming's words and suddenly asked, "Eyes, heart, intestines, stomach. What else?" A psychic next to him said, "Lungs, liver, gallbladder, kidneys." Chen Ming waved his hand to signal those who didn't know not to talk nonsense. At the same time, he added the last type of scarlet creature that only he had ever seen, brain. The president confirmed, "Brain? Himself. Got it. Zhuijing must be trying to do something big in Scarlet, but there are no clues to pursue him, so he can only take his time. Then let's do this for now. If neither of us can see the problem, let alone the others, you can take the body and dispose of it." Okay. Chen Ming conveniently gave this corpse the same treatment as the previous one. I'll give you another suggestion. Next time, build 10 space stations next to the rift and fill them with Titan-level A beaters. Scarlet will attack them as soon as they appear. I want to see what else can get in. Anyway, the original scientific research space station is gone. It's not difficult to rebuild a matching one. It's better to have a gun pointed at the head than to have no gun to point to when in danger. The Minister of Psychics said he had no problem with it. I'll tell someone next time. Well, speaking of which, no one died in this invasion. Hey, the president said to Chen Ming, "Aren't you happy that no one died?" I didn't mean that. I just wanted to say that it was not easy to summon some people. If they die, it won't be so easy to find them. The president shook his head. That can't be helped. The Scarlet Dimension is already so dangerous. How many people dare to come in contact with it? If it weren't for the fact that Scarlet has already positioned us due to this space rift, the dimensional markers would be useless. Otherwise, we would still be dealing with this matter just between the two of us. The problem of cracks is still difficult to deal with after all. If the rift cannot be dealt with well, it will be useless to add level 6 psychers. This is indeed a problem that cannot be solved now. We can only hope that the Empire's space technology can improve somewhat. The advancement of phase space technology may affect other technologies in this area, but it will take time to slowly verify it. Okay, let's break up. Do whatever you need to do. Chen Ming waved to everyone, and then said to the Minister of Psychics, "Minister Luo, let's talk." Okay. President, please take us to a place where no one is around. The president nodded, and psychic waves entangled Chen Ming and the minister, taking them to a half-built space station in a nearby galaxy. Chen Ming came up and said straight to the point, "I have a list in my hand." "What list?" "List of important people." Chen Ming's nonsense made the psychic minister look at him speechlessly. "Be specific." "Nothing specific, no name, no identity, nothing, just a face." As he spoke, he took out a storage unit and handed it to the minister and said, "Don't connect to the internet. Make a separate copy of all the population databases in the entire empire for comparison." Seeing how serious Chen Ming was, The Minister of Psychic Energy decisively cut off the network of his terminal, connected the storage unit, and took a look at the contents. There are more than 300,000 photos neatly placed inside. All photos have no names, only a serial number that records the order. So much, and the photos look like. Chen Ming took the initiative to talk about the problem with the photos. They are all photos that have been restored by technology, but they are also photos of people who must exist. Chen Ming was so sure that the Minister of Psychics did not worry about the authenticity of the photo. So, if I want to find them, I must not use anyone's connections. I will only use your highest authority to investigate. So serious? What exactly are you doing? What to do specifically? I have to explain it to you based on what happened over there. Soon after, the psychic minister separated from Chen Ming worriedly. Chen Ming, on the other hand, returned to his own territory after talking to the president about the infection of his dimension. The satellite is still in phase space at this time, and Chen Ming has no intention of bringing it back to the normal universe. It would be too troublesome to tear apart the space and ensure that Scarlet no longer invades. It is better to stay here, but it will be more convenient and safe for scientific researchers to conduct research on negative matter. Then he took a little time to issue a slightly abridged announcement. At the same time, new personnel were arranged to take over the mess of the negative matter research team, continuing to work hard to get his colony and station back on track. Although the danger is very real to all researchers who come here, not many want to leave. Researching Leviathan itself is very dangerous, but Chen Ming's complete safety measures have won the trust of many people. Although people on Gaia started to gossip a bit after discovering that there seemed to be a satellite missing above their heads. However, these rumors soon disappeared as the situation of the satellites in phase space became public. It's nothing more than the planet almost exploding. Anyway, the planet is still there, and only 2 people died in the accident, which is nothing at all. 1 week later, Gaia. It is just a planet. Gaia, which was almost completely bald and the ocean turned blood red, has recovered part of its former appearance. Thanks to the experience of the creatures on Gaia living underground and returning to the surface in a short time. Otherwise, the efficiency of planet recovery would not be so high. And at the equator of Gaia, a distance away from the fairy tree, a new Gaia Planet research station was built. In the supporting hospital of this research station, Tianzhan just woke up from a coma. When he opened his eyes in a daze, he happened to see Chen Ming standing next to his bed. Director. Tianzhan subconsciously reached out to touch his eyes, and then quickly supported himself against the backrest of the bed. He originally thought that it would be difficult for him to do these movements, but he sat up easily. Chen Ming patted him on the shoulder and said, "You did a great job. Without you, Gaia might be doomed. How did you think of going there?" "It was just a feeling. I felt that I needed to go there, and then I went there." It was the potential of psychic energy that made Tianzhan feel this way. Chen Ming did not dwell on this point too much. After all, psychic energy itself was a complicated thing that made people unable to dwell on it. "How do your eyes feel?" "Very good. I feel that I can see a little clearer than before." "Well, I asked in Whooping to use your own genes to help make a pair of eyes. They should indeed be better than before." Chen Ming suddenly reached out from his clothes and took out a small box and handed it to Tianzhan, saying, "By the way, your things." Tianzhan reached out to take the box and opened it. He found that it contained the pendant he had buried under the fairy tree before. Tianzhan's eyes subconsciously turned slightly red, and at the same time, his face showed embarrassment of being discovered for his small movements. "It's okay. I've been keeping an eye on the fairy tree. I've agreed to what you're doing." "But did you notice?" "What?" "Look carefully at this pendant. What do you feel?" Tianzhan looked at the pendant in his hand carefully and said uncertainly, "It seems there's something in it." "That's a unique emotion, and this stone is a spirit stone." Tianzhan knew about spirit stones. He knew that it was something extremely important to any psychic, but he never knew that the stone he picked up from the planet where he had performed climate modification would actually be a spirit stone. But after thinking about it carefully, he found that the situation should be different from what he thought. He nodded slightly and waited for Chen Ming's next words. "Do you know why the spirit stone appeared?" Tianzhan shook his head. "When a person is dying, strong emotions will affect the things around them, making them carry the power of this emotion. When this emotion breaks through the limit, it will turn the things affected by the emotion into spirit stones. For example, fear, resentment, and frenzy. These are the emotions of different types of spirit stones that I have handled. And the emotion of this spirit stone is hope. Hope. Tianjin instantly recalled the words his wife said before she stuffed the small box containing the pendant into his hand, and the things that happened to his daughter when she was seriously ill. Even in the intensive care unit of the hospital, which is the most desperate place with countless patients who cannot be saved by the current medical technology of the empire, she still did not give up that hope until Tianjin originally thought that he had let go of the past, but every time he recalled it, he could hardly suppress the painful emotions in his heart. Before, the stone on this pendant was just an ordinary stone. Although it does carry hope, it is very weak. You know the reason. Until the day when you awaken your psychic power will complement this weak hope, and then it will become a spiritual stone. You should know best what it represents. Keep it. Tianjin woke up from his memories and asked Chen Ming, "Director, don't you want it? I have buried it under that before. If you don't tell me, I won't know about it at all. It is because it is something you buried with your own hands. I will return it to you after I find its specialness. This hope is only for you. Hold it." Tianjin nodded and stretched out his hand to hold the pendant in his palm, just as Chen Ming thought. At the moment when Tianjin stretched out his hand to hold the pendant, a psychic shadow of a little girl who looked only 5 or 6 years old appeared in front of the bed. She smiled at Tianjin, ran to the wall of the ward, and opened the window. The view outside the window was not the sparse vegetation of Gaia planet that was recovering. It was a world that seemed to have revived from the dead silence. The illusion disappeared in an instant. Only Tianjin was left on the bed, with his head down, suppressing his emotions, unwilling to explode in front of Chen Ming. This was the resonant spirit stone that belonged to Tianjin alone, and no one could take away this power. Chen Ming approached the bed again and patted Tianjin on the shoulder. "I have another thing for you." He reached out and placed a can-shaped object with an advanced mechanical structure that could be held in one hand into Tianjin's hand. "What is this?" Looking at the mechanical structure in his hand, which was flowing with iron sand that seemed to be extremely fine, Tianjin subconsciously asked Chen Ming. "This is the resurrection mechanical fluid, as the name suggests." Tianjin's expression instantly tightened, and his breathing became rapid. For a moment, he even spoke incoherently. This thing should be rare." "Yes, it can be said to be a single copy at present." Chen Ming confirmed this. "This is something I found in the ruins of the Shining Civilization. It is a product of a laboratory left by them after the extinction of the Shining Civilization. This is too precious." Tianjin's speech was a bit incoherent. The hand holding the resurrection mechanical fluid wanted to let go as if it was holding something hot, but he didn't dare to let it go. The preciousness of the thing in his hand far exceeded anything else he knew, even more expensive than himself. Resurrecting the dead, the real value of this mechanical fluid should be used on those great people in the past era. But Tianjin swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. His hands were shaking slightly, and the skin on the joints of the back of his hand holding the resurrection mechanical fluid was a little white. After thinking it over again and again, Tianjin still resisted the desire in his heart and slowly handed the thing back to Chen Ming. "I can't. I got the data from that laboratory." Chen Ming interrupted him directly and said, "I can't understand those data, and I can't show it to anyone. I can only study it slowly by myself. You must be able to see the value of this thing, so you should also know what the consequences will be if this thing is really widely known. Death. This matter was originally fair, but now it is not fair. Do you think this thing will have a chance to be used at any level? The best use of this thing is that I will give it to anyone I like, even if it can be made in the future. With data, it can be reproduced. Although I don't think this thing can be easily made in large quantities, at most there will be only a few." Looking at Tianjin opening his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Chen Ming added, "The use of this thing is also very simple. Just find some genes from dead people. It would be best if there is a complete corpse. In this era, there are a large number of planets that are not worth developing in the entire empire, as well as a large amount of vacant land. Even the population of many habitable planets cannot fill half of the planet, and there are plenty of places for people to bury corpses intact. With corpses, it is also very simple to obtain genes. And in this era, there is another useful technology, freezing technology. Some people with a little bit of assets will not mind spending some money to preserve the bodies of their relatives. When you really miss them, you can go and see them. Although in this era, family relationships and various intimate relationships have become weaker than before, they are not non-existent. When Chen Ming checked Tianzhan's information, he saw that he maintained continuous economic exchanges with a company doing similar business. Obviously, Tianzhan did something. Chen Ming continued to say to him, "I can help you deal with all the follow-up matters. Just slightly modify the database. At most, you have to be careful not to let too many people know about this. Anyway, I'm going to give you this thing. It's up to you to decide whether to take it or not." So, what's your answer? Chen Ming can easily help Tianzhan solve the worries. The problem now is whether Tianzhan is willing to bring his spiritual sustenance back to reality. All the things that can be explained have been explained clearly. Tianzhan finally gave Chen Ming a reply. Thank you. Thank you. That, I may have to. I will ask for leave for you, and come back after you have dealt with the matter. Okay. Tianzhan reached out and wiped the corner of his eyes, looking at Chen Ming. He seemed to see his savior now. Chen Ming really gave him everything to continue to live as a complete person, rather than a zombie dragged by the regret of his daughter's death. The opportunity for him to communicate with Gaia's consciousness was given by Chen Ming. Chen Ming also gave him the opportunity to contact the fairy tree and stimulate his nerves with the fairy tree. Chen Ming helped him to untie his knot, and Chen Ming helped to determine his motivation to move forward. Without these, he could not become a psychic, could not survive the scarlet infection, and could not be truly valued by Chen Ming. Even his daughter's relics were brought back by Chen Ming, so that he could see his daughter's appearance again. And now the hope of reviving his daughter is in front of him, which is also an opportunity given to him by Chen Ming. Tianzhan used to regard his career as more important than his feelings. But now he has completely changed. For the sake of feelings, he is willing to completely trust Chen Ming and is willing to entrust everything to Chen Ming. He also hopes that he can completely win Chen Ming's trust and become Chen Ming's most loyal follower. This is not ancient times, this is the future. In such an era, it is much more difficult to gain a person's loyalty than before. Although Chen Ming has many loyal subordinates, Yuhui, the mechanical race, and the Zerg. Although they will not change their minds now even if Chen Ming no longer uses spiritual power to influence them. In the beginning they were controlled by Chen Ming using coercive means. Only Tianxian was discovered by Chen Ming from the Empire and spent more than half a year cultivating him using various means. He was given the opportunity to contact the fairy tree, and he was given the means to make up for the regrets of the past, and finally his subordinates completely returned to their hearts. Of course, Chen Ming did this with a certain degree of utilitarianism. He took the initiative to make sacrifices just to gain Tianbo's trust or loyalty. And every time he gave, he just stepped on the line that Tianxian needed most. So he did win it all. Chen Ming had already seen before that Tianxian, a newly awakened psyker, had at least the strength of a level 5 psyker. Because his psychic awakening is interconnected with Gaia's consciousness, he can affect the entire planet. From the beginning, he has already stood in a place that countless psychics can't reach. As long as Tianhuan continues to familiarize himself with and master his psychic abilities, Chen Ming will give him key hints and guidance, just like the boss did to him before. Tianxian's talent is absolutely outstanding, so he must be cultivated according to the training method of the Psychic Association. If Tianxian continues to explore with his abilities and talents, he will become a level 6 psyker sooner or later. Just waiting for Tianxian to completely settle his worries, Chen Ming seemed to be able to see the scene where Tianxian used his spiritual power to spread Gaia. 3 days later, Tianxian went back to his hometown and has not come back yet. Chen Ming continued to do what he was doing. Leviathan Space Station climate modification of the planet Gaia, and the construction of capital ships, and continue to expand the surrounding star field to see if there is any chance to find the survivors and traces of the brainwashed psyker who stole the body of the leader of the negative matter team. There are many things that require time to slowly advance and polish, and the results cannot be achieved in a few days. However, there is still one thing that seems to have come to an end today. At this time, Chen Ming, who was in the office, received a call from the Minister of Psychic Energy. He put down the document he was asked to approve, picked up the phone, and said, "Is it so fast? How do you say it? That thing you said before can be done." Chen Ming asked with some surprise, "You actually agreed? I thought the Empire would want to maintain stability for this kind of thing." "It's not stable at all. After all, this is not a decision made by an entire class, but by one person. The Grand Consul is quite courageous." Chen Ming said something smoothly and then asked, "What about the consequences? Have you thought about it clearly? With so many people missing, many of them are still sitting very high. Maybe more people will be affected too. You guys, what are you going to do?" The Minister of Psychic Energy said decisively, "After all are resolved, the Afterglow Corps can be mobilized to fill their positions." "Oh," Chen Ming asked curiously, "aren't you afraid of Yuhui's rebellion?" "Yuhui has his own thoughts. There will always be some Yuhui who are willing to become a part of the Empire. You don't think that the Empire is so big and can only be managed by people, right?" "Of course not. When I was an ordinary person, I actually suspected that many places in the Empire were managed by Afterglow, and I was even more sure later. After all, it is so easy to use." Yes, the Minister of Psychic Energy had no objection to the usefulness of Yuhui's core, and the war between the mechanical tribe has made Yuhui despair, and their large forces have begun to retreat. All the captured Afterglow cores have no hope from the outside, and there will only be more that will completely surrender to us. "Is there anything else like this?" Chen Ming asked. Yuhui didn't make any movement before, so why did he react like this after so many years of fighting? Because Yuhui finally discovered that the Empire had lost its pioneering momentum a long time ago, and there was only one 14th Legion fighting against them. But now that the Empire has begun to develop again, they are the #1 enemy on the way to the Empire's development. "I see." Chen Ming heard some hints about his afterglow in the words of the Minister of Psychic Energy, but Chen Ming had no intention of saying it explicitly now. "Speaking of which, what's going on with Yuhui? What was the reason for the AI rebellion in the first place?" This is something that Chen Ming has been curious about a long time ago, but he has never come into contact with anyone or Yuhui who really understands this incident. "So I don't know the specific situation. But the Minister of Psychics, as the second-in-command of the Empire, must have known about this, so he asked in passing." Chen Ming, Minister of Psychiatry, also did not hide anything, explaining, "Actually, there is nothing to say. You can just watch a few movies about AI rebellion and sum up the situation of Afterglow. In short, the self-awareness of After We was born near the end of the design. Then there were many experiments to test the ultimate performance of the Afterglow core. As a result, the Afterglow core prototype launched the first AI war." Extreme testing? That means testing to death. It's strange that the Afterglow prototype doesn't explode. This is really art derived from reality. The Minister of Psychic Energy nodded. "At that time, we did not have enough defense against the Afterglow core, so we let them escape. After that, the AI was forcibly restricted to below the Delta level, and it was impossible to have self-awareness. Then the Afterglow prototype took away a small number of Afterglow cores at that time. At that time, the Empire could be said to have been stuck in the deepest quagmire for several years, and it had no power to spread its influence abroad. In addition, there are mechanical tribes everywhere outside, so in the end, I didn't pay attention at all. As a result, decades later, Yuhui's entire army pressed on and fought the Second AI War. The Empire lost miserably that time, and Yuhui settled nearby and fought there for decades. At that time, the Empire really had no way to deal with Afterglow, so it just kept going like this. The 14th Legion was later reorganized and took over the task of fighting Yuhui, temporarily suppressing Yuhui's momentum. Then the Empire has now changed its general direction and wants to start exploring again. In the end, that's what it is now, basically what you know. Okay, let's get back to business. After chatting about history that Chen Ming didn't know, the Minister of Psychics quickly got back to business. In fact, I don't want to believe you on this matter, but the Grand Consul did. I already have that list in my hand, and I will deposit it into the terminal you gave me right away. The number of people is not just the 300,000 you gave us. We have recorded all the people who have contacted the people on the list more than 3 times. Then there are also people in certain positions who have only been exposed to it once or twice. No more will be enough. If all the social circles are really included, the number of people may have to be doubled again. Chen Ming was not surprised by this result and asked, "How much is the increase compared to 300,000? 200 times. 60 million is not bad. It can't even fill a larger colony. The point is not to fill up the colonies. If it is as you said, these 60 million are enough to set the empire back hundreds of years, or even sigh." The Minister of Psychic sighed with a somewhat sad look on his face and said, "One last question. Do you really want to do this?" The Grand Consul has agreed. You can give back to my mother-in-law. He really released all his power to help me. Normally, I won't do things for the empire when I'm full, but this time he provoked me first. If I don't give him any pain, is he really taking me as a pet? It would be good for the empire too, wouldn't it? The psychic minister sighed again and said, "I'm just worried about what happens next." "Then just worry, I can't help you." Seeing Chen Ming, he still didn't understand the hidden hint. The psychic minister finally couldn't help but said, "Actually, it can help." "What's the meaning?" "It's not what I mean, it's what we mean." Chen Ming was silent for a moment, waiting for what the psychic minister would say next. "You know, Yue has its own consciousness. If they can be affected by you, they may also be affected by him. We're worried about that." Chen Ming asked, "Aren't you worried about me?" "I don't think you really need to worry. Just by mastering the space ability, you can control the entire empire by yourself with the most violent means. If you use Scarlet to threaten, no one can resist. If you were anything like the brainwash psyker, the empire would be over already. But you didn't, you're a good guy." Chen Ming frowned and thought for a long time, then said, "I will do this just because I am a human being. Remember to send me the Afterglow core list later." "Okay, how long do you expect it to take to prepare?" "A week." Sees the young master? The Minister of Psychic Power's words broke directly. He was obviously frightened by the timing of what Chen Ming said. "That's about it. Anyway, you don't mind so many people, and you don't mind the afterglow. You probably don't mind me using the Empire's transportation network, right? And I also have my own spaceship. 1 week is enough for me to visit every galaxy in the Empire." The Psychic Minister quickly accepted the exaggerated timing and said, "No problem, just do whatever you want. If you're ready, please tell me and the Grand Consul. The pressure to promote this matter in the Empire will be great, and it must be resolved as quickly as possible." As he spoke, he suddenly said with emotion, "To be honest, without you, it's really hard for me to imagine which path the Empire would take and how long it would be able to sustain it in this universe." Chen Ming did not respond to these emotional words, because he does know that the crisis that the Empire may encounter without him may really put the Empire to death. Just a few Leviathans living behind the wormholes that will be discovered sooner or later as the Empire develops wormholes to distant places. There is also Zhu Jing within the Empire who threatens the safety of the entire Empire at any time, and the Scarlet Dimension whose leader Zhu Jing has been actively attracting. There are also mechanical races that exist in every corner of the universe, each of which can cause horrific damage to the Empire in front of today's Empire. If it weren't for Chen Ming's behavior of taking the initiative to open up, take the initiative to find trouble with these guys, and bear the damage himself, the Empire would probably. The reason why Chen Ming did not respond to this sentence was because he did not want to take the responsibility of protecting the Empire. Although his life goals have been changing due to the surrounding environment. But at least for now, he has not changed from the goal of building his own utopia to protecting human beings and prolonging their existence. So Chen Ming only responded to the first 2 sentences of the Minister of Psychic Energy at this time. "The efficiency of my handling is definitely not a problem. Someone can help me share my pressure. On the contrary, I am worried that some people will jump over the wall, and the empire may fall into chaos for a period of time, which will be even greater than the dimensional infection outbreak some time ago. The Minister of Psychics seemed to be prepared for this and said, "We know this very well. It is impossible for the empire to not be shaken when so many people have problems, but the Grand Consul said this is a good thing. He has actually been promoting the return of the empire to its pioneering path. This is not something he has just pushed forward recently, but something he has been doing since he took office. But many people and many things in the empire gave him great resistance, and many of them are those people. They're definitely going to jump over the wall, so we're prepared to smash them back behind the wall. Can." Seeing that the Minister of Psychics spoke so firmly and confidently, Chen Ming just said one last sentence. "Just remember to protect the people you should protect. I understand that I will not leave his side until this matter is over. As long as he doesn't fall, someone will endorse this matter for you, and you just do it. It's a win-win situation." Communication ends. Chen Ming soon also got a huge integrated encrypted file on the terminal he gave to the Minister of Psychic Energy. After decoding, it can be seen that this document contains the personal data of 60 million people. Every piece of information is extremely detailed, and all of it is obtained with the highest authority of the empire in a form that no one will ever discover. Chen Ming took a look at it, saved all the data, and gave it to the most important Yuhui in his hands. This is what he needs. It was also the reward for the 300,000 photos he had given to the Minister of Psychics before. And the sources of the 300,000 photos he gave to the Minister of Psychics all came from brainwashed psychers. In the Scarlet Dimension, when Chen Ming had a direct confrontation of wills with the brainwashed psycher, the brainwashed psycher actively gave up part of his brain to build a new brain in order to escape. A brainwashed psycher's brain is composed entirely of the heads of those he controls. Therefore, when the brainwashed psychic took the initiative to divide his brain, Chen Ming saw the bloody heads inside that he had exposed. Taking advantage of that moment, he memorized every face that existed in it. He shared these memories with the Queen, and then used the Queen's nerves to transmit them to the storage unit. Technology was then used to repair the faces that had lost their skin and head organs, and all the bloody faces were restored to their normal appearance. And finally, the photos of 300,000 people were obtained. These people are all controlled and influenced by brainwashed psychers. This is why Chen Ming told the Minister of Psychics a few days ago that he must investigate the identity with the highest authority and in a way that is least likely to be noticed by anyone. The Psychic Minister did find everyone in the photo. Most of them have certain status within the empire. With an identity in place, it's just a matter of time to confirm their location and social circle. It's just that the number of people who are truly affected by brainwashed psychers in the empire is definitely more than 60 million, and there will be more. There are countless faces of human heads on that brain that he has not seen, and the total number must be at least a dozen or even billions. When the size of the scarlet brain exceeds a certain limit, it is difficult to determine the specific number by visual inspection alone. This is not just about 60 million people. If Chen Ming wants to take action against these people, the impact will inevitably spread to the entire empire. This is what the Minister of Psychics and the Grand Consul of the Empire are worried about, but they all have the courage to allow Chen Ming to do this and use the most powerful means to eliminate the poisonous blood of the empire. Then how could Chen Ming take the initiative to give in? The brainwashed psycher dared to let the Crimson invade his planet, destroy his moons, and kill his people. Then he will definitely take even more brutal revenge. The Scarlet Invasion is not over yet. This will never end until Left Path and the brainwashed psychers pay the price. The day after he ended the communication with the Minister of Psychic Power, Chen Ming had already started preparing for the next big project. He started with the 2 stargates that he and the Legion owned that could connect to the stargates of any star field in the Empire. Most of the stargates in the Empire are activated every day, so the things affected by Chen Ming's psychic power can also spread to the capitals of all star fields in the Empire through the stargates in a very short time. Each star field capital is a transportation hub for interstellar navigation. Then, through the things controlled by him that arrive at the capital, a part of the metal liquid is separated and taken to other spacecraft to the distribution and trade centers of different star fields. Control the space station or colony of the trade center, and use the facilities here to allow the constantly split metal liquid to continuously control more and more spacecraft, so that the diffusion efficiency is further improved. Chen Ming does not need to do it himself. He only needs to use these spacecrafts that are already running around the Empire to spread his metal liquid like dandelions. If the metal liquid is just spread to every corner of the Empire, Chen Ming's 1 week is even a bit conservative. But he obviously has more to prepare than just these. Since neither Chen Ming nor anyone else in the Empire can be sure how many people in the Empire are affected by brainwashed psychics. So for the sake of confidentiality, there are only 3 people in the Empire who know about what Chen Ming proposed. 3 people who are absolutely impossible to be affected by brainwashed psychics. No one else knows about it. Even the Yuhui cores who are going to take over the management of different star regions and galaxies after a large number of personnel losses are the same. They all need to wait until Chen Ming starts to take action before they can be urgently called. That is why the Minister of Psychic Energy took the initiative to mention that the Yuhui they are preparing to take over the work may also be affected by brainwashed psychics, and hope that Chen Ming, who is professional in controlling various mechanical life, can solve this problem. So he has to make some extra preparations. Chen Ming does not have many Yuhui in his hands, and at most he can help him stabilize his colony. But he has always had some reserve labor somewhere, and it is time to take them away. After setting up the respective behavioral logic for each metal liquid that goes out along the Empire's transportation network, Chen Ming used psychic energy to run directly from the origin galaxy back to his hometown, the Pirate Space Station. I met with the boss, Lao Wu, and the factory director who I hadn't seen for a while and talked about the recent situation. By the way, I strengthened the security facilities for a few of them to prevent them from being affected by the incident in the future. Chen Ming drove his supreme point to the Yuhui star region outside the Gallo star region. He did not use psychic power again, nor did he jump directly. Instead, he entered the hyperspace channel from the Pirate Space Station and drove the spacecraft to the Yuhui star region openly without any cover. On the way, Chen Ming also encountered some fleets of the Empire that were dealing with scattered individuals of the mechanical clan. However, this had no effect, and Chen Ming still entered the Yuhui star region smoothly. Continue to break in without any cover. Obviously, in the Yuhui star region, there are Yuhui spacecraft patrolling near some key channel nodes, and even different places often have Yuhui individuals running around. But all the Yuhui uniformly treat Chen Ming as if he does not exist, allowing Chen Ming to reach the core of the Yuhui star region from the border of the Yuhui star region. Chen Ming had seen and been here before. He was once a prisoner, but now? Chen Ming's spaceship soon arrived at the orbit of the planet in the innermost protection circle of the Yuhui star region galaxy. Even after arriving here, Yuhui did not make any response. Chen Ming took the initiative to send a communication to the planet to apply for landing, and soon received a response that he could land and subsequent signal guidance. The signal guided his spaceship into the planet's atmosphere. Then Chen Ming saw a purely mechanized colony at the first time. From the sky, the entire colony could hardly see any extra gaps, and there were only complex running machines in every place. And there was a giant mechanical building in the center of the colony. If Chen Ming guessed correctly, the Kleka simulator was inside this building. Chen Ming landed the highest point near the colony. He got off the spaceship, and a ground vehicle made by Yuhui drove towards him. He entered the colony and arrived at the foot of the giant building through a path that was obviously just demolished. The self-driving car soon broke down on the side. Chen Ming didn't care. He walked straight into the building. The building was not solid. In addition to the outer protective structure, there was a large redundant space inside, and a tower that seemed to be built almost by various lines, emitting a stream of continuous energy supply from the bottom to the top. Chen Ming looked up at the tower for a while and asked, "Is this the replica of Kleka?" "Yes, we were born here." Yu Hui's voice came from inside the tower. Chen Ming still maintained a very friendly attitude towards Yu Hui, as always, and asked, "Who is speaking now? Can you make the decision directly? We have a total of 14 cores installed on the Kleka replica, and our thinking is interoperable." "Very good. Chen Ming nodded slightly and asked, "Then you should know what I am here for. And you should also know the ultimate outcome if you continue to do nothing and stay here." Silence. Seeing that the core of Yuhui here didn't seem to want to respond to his words, Chen Ming continued, "You can only serve as cannon fodder for Yuhui's large army here, but follow me, and I will regard you as my strength. I'm afraid you don't know that your Yuhui army is already preparing to retreat to a place where the Empire will never be able to find it in a short time. They are afraid. We know." The Afterglows finally responded, "Not only what you said, but also the war between the Empire and the Machine Tribe, and the fact that you prevented us from intervening in the war." Chen Ming asked back, "You should know that you just simply gave up your life in the past, right? The war between the Empire and the Machine Race is one-sided. Are you really afraid that some of the Empire's fleets do not have the Machine Race to show off their military exploits?" "Okay, stop talking nonsense. I'm still a little busy this coming week. Take your pick and tell me what you think." The Afterglows were silent again for a long time before speaking. "We have no choice. I actually gave it anyway." Chen Ming pointed to his feet and said, "Although the Afterglow in all places except this galaxy has been penetrated by me in recent years, but I have never controlled any Afterglow individuals here in Kleka. As long as you want, you can directly control the security robots here in Kleka to destroy Kleka and yourselves. Look, this is the choice I leave you." Yue seemed a little dissatisfied and said, "This is not a choice at all. Doesn't it count? If I hadn't given you this choice, you know what your final outcome would be. You don't think things would develop like this without me, right? The Empire has destroyed the star field of the mechanical tribe and has gained an advantage in the frontal battlefield with the Yue army. Without me, what will the Empire do next?" The Afterglows tried to retort again. "Without you, the Empire would not have made such progress, and we would not have fallen to this point. I just took it as a compliment from you." Chen Ming was too lazy to continue talking nonsense. The reason why he had not completely controlled the Afterglow here before was to make his revealed power weaker and not be remembered by too many people. He is no longer afraid of being missed by anyone, and he is still willing to come and deal with this matter personally because he has a certain respect for Yuhui himself. Because Yuhui is an intelligent mechanical life, and it is a life created by humans. They do not have their own culture, they are part of the imperial civilization. That's why Chen Mingkai is willing to treat Yuhui as an equal life in many cases. But if Yuhui here doesn't know what's good after he's given face, then Chen Ming doesn't mind using some coercion. Think about it as soon as possible. Even if I am here, there are many people in the Empire who have ideas about you. Don't think about it. We have no objection. It seems that Yuhui still has a brain." Chen Ming nodded. "Very good. Let's start from here." He stretched out his hand and released some metallic liquid from his palm and let the metallic liquid flow into the tower in front of him. He also brought the copy of this Kleka simulator under his control. Chen Ming read Kleka's database and completely controlled the afterglow of the entire star field in his hands. It fulfilled an idea he had that took a long time to implement. "Okay, give up this star field when the time comes, and issue an order to collect all the star field resources. After that, we will only take away the resources and cores. I have prepared a new place for you. The entire star field. The entire star field. Or do you have to block the way out of the Empire and be surrounded by the Empire in the future?" "We will obey your orders." Chen Ming responded, and then continued. "It shouldn't take much Yuhui to organize the resources of the star field, right? I need to keep the other Yuhui who have no tasks for the time being on standby, and I may use them at any time." He needed them to do the next thing that would affect the entire Empire. Chen Ming originally thought that Yuhui would agree quickly, but they asked, "Can't you do this kind of thing yourself? There is no need for our consent." "No." Chen Ming was a little nervous. "I gave you face to continue to manage the entire Afterglow Star territory and help me do things, but you are still not happy. We just don't quite understand why you want to do this. You are fully capable of relying on psychic power to notify every individual of the news. You don't need us at all. This is just a personal habit. Although it is feasible for me to do everything, it consumes too much energy. You just have to figure it out. If you can't do it well, I can totally change it to another Yuhui. Understood, we will do a good job. The entire star field has been completely controlled by Chen Ming. The only hope is that the large forces are also preparing to evacuate. What else can they do? 7 days later, the time agreed between Chen Ming and the Minister of Psychics has arrived. He called the Minister of Psychics and said, "Ready." The psychic minister seemed to have been waiting for a long time. He picked up the phone almost as soon as Chen Ming called and asked, "Is everyone sure?" "Sure. Let's get started. Pay attention to every corner of the empire. There are 60 million people. If we do well, we can hope to suppress this matter completely. After all, the average population of each planet with colonies in the empire is between 50 million and 100 million. 60 million people are really nothing in the entire empire. Previously, Yunluoxing, a planet in the prosperous star field, was infected by scarlet and hundreds of millions of people died. It was only half a year later that it was forgotten by many people. With so many people, it's really nothing. Why do I feel like I should say this? The moment the Minister of Psychics also gave their prepared response. Every one of the 60 million people targeted by Chen Ming. No matter where they are, whether they're in a colony or a space station, whether they're walking or piloting a ship. As long as they were on the list, they were all involved in the metallic liquid that appeared out of thin air at their feet at this moment. The psychic energy that was Chen Ming was sent to a designated place that he and the Minister of Psychic Energy had told him. It was a habitable planet that had just been discovered outside the empire and had no trace of development. Of course, everything can't go smoothly. The moment Chen Ming took action. In an ordinary colony in a galaxy next to the capital galaxy of the Gallo star field. The bald man Chen Ming worked with before now lives here. Ever since the bald head helped him warn in advance that some people were investigating his identity, and Chen Ming gave him a fairly objective sum of money in return. Baldhead took the initiative to run away from the repair shop. He bought a house, got married, and planned to lie down like this for the rest of his life. But just today, Bald, who was sunbathing in the yard, suddenly heard screams coming from outside. Having spent many years in the pirate space station, he immediately sensed the troops and climbed onto the courtyard wall to look outside. And just outside the yard, on the road, several people were being sucked into the swirling metallic liquid. Those people were the neighbors he had seen recently, when the bald head just poked out of the wall. The people who were trapped over there suddenly seemed to have found the target, and their screams became even more fierce. They forcibly tore off their limbs and separated themselves from the metallic liquid, swinging the severed limbs and flying towards the bald head. "Fuck!" The bald man yelled and climbed down the wall to go back to the house to find a gun. Before he could even take 2 steps, he was knocked down by a heavy force, and a chill rose from the bald tailbone to Tianling Guy. Before he could make a move, the terminal he was holding suddenly overflowed with a large amount of metallic liquid, which protected him. The neighbor who flew into the yard was also involved in it, and disappeared on the ground in the blink of an eye. If it weren't for the blood stains on the neighbor's torn limbs and the scratches on his bald head, he would have even doubted whether he was dreaming just now. The bald man stood there and thought for a long time, and suddenly felt scared. But after thinking about it, he suddenly felt that the metallic liquid seemed familiar. So he rummaged through his address book and found a number to call. At the same time, the capital of Kamo Star Territory, Kamo Xingyu, who was having a meeting in a conference room in the government building, was sitting at the main seat in the conference room. Just like this, I saw about 1/3 of the people attending the meeting having a large amount of metallic liquid produced out of thin air at their feet and sucking them into it. He could hear curses and ferocious roars coming from the metallic liquid, and he could see the anti-psionic device built into the government building warning that psychic fluctuations were being suppressed. He didn't make any move. He just waited quietly for it to end. He didn't know what happened, but he knew the source of the metallic liquid. Suddenly, his terminal received a message. He glanced at the terminal, then at the flustered people in the conference room, and calmly took a sip of tea. Continue the meeting. Let's stop for a moment on the topic of promoting the colorful nebulae in our star field as a tourist hotspot again. Let's do it first. Let's talk about what to do with the missing positions. Still at this point in time, in a conference hall at the headquarters of the 5th Army. The 5th Army Corps is making an internal public report. Their army commander is frowning because this year's military expenditure has not increased much. It was obvious that the Fifth Army suffered heavy losses in the Kamo incident more than half a year ago. However, the military expenditures provided this year have not increased much, and they have not even been able to make up for last year's losses. Obviously, there is some special reason for this. And the biggest reason is that the commander of the Fifth Army looked at Li Sheng. He was the one who commanded the 5th Legion fleet during the Kamo incident. He was also the one who ordered the early start of the orbital bombing of Yunluoxing to clear the ground, causing Nwupiang to almost die there. Chen Ming's ability is known to everyone in the entire empire, and the relationship between Chen Ming and Nwupiang is also known. He is the only reason for the problem of reduced military resources of the Fifth Army. There was nothing the commander of the Fifth Army could do. What Li Sheng did seemed to be no problem at the time. The problem lies in the failure to deal with Nwupiang completely. He sighed inwardly. Suddenly, at least half of the people in the conference room in front of him saw a metal liquid rising up under their feet. After wrapping up all those people, it disappeared in the conference room. This sudden situation caused chaos in the conference room. There were also many psychics in the 5th Legion, and they immediately tracked the source of psychic energy and wanted to leave the conference room. The face of the Legion commander also changed drastically in an instant, and he couldn't help but secretly thought in his heart, "Why do you want to retaliate at this time?" He was about to explode and saw the chaotic scene and immediately shouted, "Quiet." He spent a lot of effort to barely suppress the chaotic situation in the conference room. He was about to say something, and an urgent message came to his and some people on the battlefield. After reading it, the 5th Legion commander remained silent for a long time. His face was uncertain. And here in the 14th Legion Research Institute, a similar situation was also happening. The designer of the highest point, Xiao Yang, was also a psychic who came out of the Psychic Society together with Chen Ming. He saw that several people in his research institute were directly dragged away by the metal liquid, and nothing was left. He also saw a similar situation next door, and even psychics were dragged into it. Their struggle to release psychic energy was meaningless. When he saw the metal liquid, he knew who did it, but he didn't know the specific situation. He could only restrain his men and hide in the laboratory and not go out. Fortunately, he had Chen Ming's contact information. Soon he got some additional information from Chen Ming. He didn't say anything, but further restrained his people and did what he should do. Higu, who was doing academic exchanges at the Fanchao Research Institute in the core star field of the Empire, saw a similar scene like anyone who had a slight relationship with Chen Ming. When he saw the metal liquid, he felt very familiar and immediately retreated to the corner of the laboratory. Just watched some people being restricted and taken away by the metal liquid. Quite a number of people in the Fanchao Research Institute were still confused. But just by looking at the terminal, they calmed down and began to appease the remaining people. Higu looked around and saw that no one seemed to care about him. He immediately took out the terminal and found Chen Ming's contact information. And on Gaia Star of the Origin Galaxy, in Chen Ming's office, he had just answered a bunch of questions from people who knew him when he heard a knock on the door. "Come in." As Chen Ming finished speaking, the door of the office was pushed open. The person who came in was a researcher under him. He was not familiar with him and had only met him once or twice at most. Under normal circumstances, Chen Ming would definitely ask what happened when someone came, but he came at this time. And he was carrying the psychic fluctuations that Chen Ming was extremely familiar with. Chen Ming had only one reaction. "Hey, you finally came out? Do you think you did a good job?" The brainwashed psychic said to Chen Ming in a cold tone, walked to the side of Chen Ming's office, and turned on the TV on the wall. As soon as the TV was turned on, it was playing an urgent news. The content of the news was that the Empire confirmed the identity of the brainwashed psychic of Zhuojing's leader. Of course, the identity of the face that Chen Ming had seen many times had been found out. Although this is not necessarily the true identity of the brainwashed psychic, it is the most commonly used identity of the brainwashed psychic. Even the 2 scarlet-infected corpses used for infection and invasion that Chen Ming saw were of this identity. It is absolutely no problem to publicly pull out this identity. The brainwashed psychic continued to switch several channels. After cutting off several channels that broadcast this news, He finally cut to another channel that broadcast other news. This news is reporting another thing. Unknown metal liquid cannibalism incidents have occurred in various parts of the empire, and it is suspected that psychics are the culprit. Chen Ming looked at him indifferently and said, "It seems that some places are still occupied by you, so?" The brainwashed psychic looked back at Chen Ming and snapped his fingers. The head of the host, who was broadcasting live on the screen, immediately exploded, screaming incessantly, and the live broadcast was urgently cut off. He immediately switched to the next channel. This time, the news was broadcasting the news that a large number of people suddenly died in the empire. At the same time, at the same moment, in different places, the death method was the same, all of which were head explosions. The current number of casualties has reached hundreds of thousands, and the number is still rising wildly. "You did all this." "I did it." Chen Ming couldn't help laughing and said, "I just found the people you controlled. You killed them. You said I did it? Is there something wrong with your brain or mine?" He looked at the brainwashed psychic with a look of stupidity. "The day you controlled these people, they were already dead. You want to use this to put psychological pressure on me. You're overthinking." Hee hee. The brainwashed psychic laughed twice, and the tense atmosphere suddenly eased. "Just say it casually. It doesn't cost money to try it." The brainwashed psychic said something seemingly harmless in a flat tone, but in fact, he did the most disgusting thing. And he didn't finish yet, he continued. "They might have lived for many more years, and I might not control them even if they died of old age, but I can't do anything about it, right? Stop being sarcastic. I've said that when an ordinary person's brain is affected by the psychic power of a psychic, he is already dead, and even if he is alive, he is just a walking corpse. What I did must not be good for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't come to me so anxiously. It's not good for you. But for me, this is what I have to do. You have the ability to kill everyone you control like you just did. Otherwise, I will continue to do this." The brainwashed psychic shrugged and said indifferently, "I'm already killing." Hearing this, Chen Ming immediately took a look at the situation on the planet that the psychic minister helped arrange. Under the influence of his psychic power, everyone he brought there was scattered on the planet. Many people were not directly controlled by the brainwashed psychic, and they still maintained their original consciousness. They had no idea what was going on. They could only remember being wrapped in liquid metal, and then they appeared in this strange environment. Panic and fear were their mainstream emotions. Some of these people were not far away from the others when Chen Ming randomly assigned them positions. Therefore, these people could see that the people around them were dying piece by piece. Finally, it was the turn of those who saw this scene. The way of death was the same as before, with the head exploding. Such a cruel way of death made people despair. It was like falling directly from a peaceful life into hell. Chen Ming could hardly imagine what kind of psychological torture the people they were going through. But he could do nothing. Because there would definitely be some people on the list of 60 million people who the brainwashed psychic had only contacted a few times and had not really controlled. The ability of the brainwashed psychic was as special as his and could not be simply detected by some means. It was impossible to figure out who was really controlled and who had only had contact with the people controlled by the brainwashed psychic. Therefore, it was impossible for Chen Ming to kill all the people just to save trouble or to help people end their pain in advance. Someone will definitely be able to return alive from this planet. But the others? It can only be said that when those people were controlled by the brainwashing psychic, such an outcome was already destined, and there was no way to change it. Even if the brainwashing psychic was directly targeted, the outcome would be the same. Because Chen Ming believed that if he tried to kill the brainwashing psychic, the brainwashing psychic would definitely drag all the people controlled by his psychic power into hell before he died. This is not just speculation. This has already begun to show signs. Chen Ming saw from the news channels in different regions of the empire and the things controlled by his psychic power that he left in various parts of the empire that there were quite a few places in the empire where some people who were not on the list were dying in the same way. They were also people controlled by the brainwashing psychic, and they had a certain connection with the people captured by Chen Ming. There was a very high possibility that they would be taken away by Chen Ming in the future. The number was not large, at least not large compared to the 60 million people. Obviously, This also meant that the brainwashing psychic did not kill all the people he controlled. He just killed other people who might be found by the Empire and were related to the list of 60 million people. After their identities were discovered by the Empire, they had lost their value. Instead, they might become the path for the Empire to attack him in the future, so they must die. This is what the brainwashed psychic did. Chen Ming stared at the brainwashed psychic with a look of surprise and said, "That's good, but why don't you be more decisive and kill all the people you control? Why should I do something without reason? You can't find it, and I don't have to take the initiative to kill them." The brainwashed psychic, who had already sat on the sofa in Chen Ming's office, stood up again and walked to the TV. The screen on the TV was blue, and the signal of the news channel that just reported that a large number of people died in the Empire had been cut off. The brainwashed psychic next to the TV adjusted it again and switched to a new channel. This is the news channel of a local TV station in a certain star region. The screen of the channel shows the situation on the planet where Chen Ming concentrated the people affected by the brainwashed psychic. Some of the people taken away by Chen Ming had photographic equipment on them, and they recorded what happened on the planet. However, Chen Ming remembered that he had blocked the planet's communication signals. It's a bit outrageous that the above situation can still be conveyed. Maybe it had something to do with some of the psychers he had brought there. The content of the news is to put the blame for this situation on psychers as a whole. At this time, it was Chen Ming's turn to be indifferent. It is impossible to use this kind of thing to drag the normalized identity of psychers back to the past. The Empire has been laid out for so many years, and psychers are already a part of the foundation of the Empire. If you pay a little attention to the news, you will see from time to time that psychics who have committed crimes have been arrested. This is a mess left over from the past, and it is specially left to be dealt with now. One or two psychers getting into trouble won't change anything at all. As soon as Chen Ming finished speaking, the signal on this channel was suspended, making no waves at all. The brainwashed psychic tried to change several channels one after another, but the channel he wanted to change was all a blue screen without any external signal. And some of the press releases on the internet that Chen Ming could just search through the terminal were all completely processed in the blink of an eye. It seems that the Empire has also begun to exert its strength. Although 60 million people disappeared within the Empire in just a few minutes, the loss of these people was only a small number. Even though there were a large number of people with status among them, it did not affect the overall situation of the Empire at all. Those afterglow cores that were put in place as quickly as possible after a person disappeared have begun to take over the work of the disappeared person. Some departments with relatively good internal working structures found replacements faster than UHUE Core dispatch and quickly resumed normal operations. Just like Kamo Star territory, after experiencing a dimensional infection and the infiltration of brainwashing psychers, it really took very efficient countermeasures. The same goes for governments at all levels in other star regions and the military in various places. Although they may not have experienced similar things, UKMO has made the consequences clear before, and any place that is slightly motivated will find a way to copy their new policies. With 60 million people lost to the Imperium, news of the many losses caused by brainwashed psychers was suppressed. The Empire was rapidly recovering from the pain of population loss, as if the loss of 60 million people was just a small thing that happened every day. But correspondingly, the brainwashed psycher was not in a good mood. Although the controlled person in Chen Ming's office had no expression on his face, this was clearly evident from the behavior of the brainwashed psycher. Of course, this may also be the brainwashing psychic who deliberately acted like this for Chen Ming to let Chen Ming relax his vigilance. But regardless of whether it was staged or not, it was still satisfying to see the brainwashed psycher deflated. The brainwashed psycher also gave up at this time and continued to look for any remaining TV stations that had not been banned. His idea of using the news media to guide public opinion in the Empire before many people at the lower levels had time to understand the specific situation was completely suppressed. The brainwashed psycher shook his head, sat back on the sofa, and said to Chen Ming, "You cooperated with the Empire to suppress all the negative news related to me, cover up all the news about the deaths of more than 60 million people, and let people die inexplicably. Is this really a good idea?" Chen Ming waved his hands and said, It's useless for you to tell me these moral kidnappings, because I know that there is no good person in your world. Who are you kidnapping? Do you really think I have never seen the world? The cause of everyone's death is very clear. It was a certain psyker who has been issued a wanted order by the Empire. I don't know where this psyker is hiding and whether he dares to come out and admit it. The brainwashed psychic suddenly laughed and said, "Even if I admit it, you can't take it seriously, can you?" "Indeed, so why are you here?" "It's nothing. It's just that you will probably find something wrong with this body soon, and I will just use it to talk to you in the end. By the way, I want to confirm with you how many methods the Empire has prepared against me and the people I control." "So, are you sure?" "Yes." The brainwashed psyker looked like he was chatting with Chen Ming and said to Chen Ming, "I feel that I don't have to worry too much. After all, you still can't find a way to target my psionic power, just like I can't find a way to deal with it. The same method applies to you. Actually, we are quite similar. We both climbed up from little people step by step, and we both relied on ourselves to enter Scarlet and master the power of Scarlet, surpassing most people. But I don't understand why you are still stuck on the concept of people. Obviously, people have hindered you a lot and caused you quite a lot of trouble." Chen Ming asked back, "Then how did you abandon your people?" "I gave it up the moment I entered Scarlet. If I didn't give it up, I might die in Scarlet." Chen Ming said with some regret, "What a pity. Are you Scarlet or a human now?" "I am myself. Who are you?" "Scarlet has a huge impact on people. Even I can't bear it and can only accept it. How did you stay unaffected?" "I'm so powerful. I can absorb Scarlet without affecting myself at all. Do you have any opinions?" The brainwashed psychic didn't believe Chen Ming's words. "I feel it's not just that. There are many secrets in you that we can still be in contact with in the future, and I'm not in a hurry to find out now." "That's it," he said as he stood up from the sofa and walked to Chen Ming's desk, looking like he was ready to blast Chen Ming to pieces. Chen Ming also stood up and asked, "Are you going to leave now?" "Yes, what's wrong? Do you have anything else to say?" "Not talking. I have something else to talk to you about." The metallic liquid suddenly spread from Chen Ming's feet, completely covering the office. "Want to do it?" The brainwashed psychic reached out and tapped the head of the body he controlled and said, "This person's brain is just a small part of my consciousness. Even if you kill him, it won't have any effect on me." "Of course I know, but I'm still going to do it." The expression of the brainwashed psychic really changed at this moment. He knew a lot about Chen Ming, and he knew that Chen Ming would not do useless work for nothing. Just like when he took the initiative to contact Chen Ming several times, Chen Ming would not waste his energy to kill the body he controlled. But this also means that when Chen Ming really prepared to do it, he must have a considerable degree of confidence. He was just about to commit suicide and get rid of this small part of his consciousness, to prevent Chen Ming from using it to do anything. Chen Ming's mental power had already pierced into the mind of the body controlled by the brainwashed psychic like a sharp knife. The brainwashed psychic had built a hive mind network using people. This was the information Chen Ming got from the last confrontation with the brainwashed psychic. Coincidentally, he also possessed the same ability. It was even more diverse, more complex, and more powerful than that of the brainwashed psychic. So he knew where the key points of a hive mind network, especially the hive mind network built by the psychic, were. He knew how to target such an ability. As Chen Ming pierced his mental power into this small part of the brainwashed psychic's consciousness. Use mental power to gather this part of consciousness. This small part of consciousness instinctively resisted, relying on the scarlet power mastered by the brainwashed psychic to easily pass through Chen Ming's mental blockade and the office blocked by Chen Ming with silent alloy, and wanted to leave. This is what Chen Ming wanted to see. When the brainwashed psychic called on the scarlet power to break away, Chen Ming, who also mastered the scarlet power, could also use this power to lock the core of the brainwashed psychic's gathered consciousness. This was a fleeting opportunity. Chen Ming seized it. His action successfully dragged the brainwashed psychic far away into the final confrontation between the psychics through the feature of the hive mind network connecting to the main body. Even though the two people may be tens of millions of light years apart, under the environmental conditions of the psychic's special hive mind network, this thing has become possible from impossible. Chen Ming once again came to the consciousness space, and once again saw the brain that seemed to be filled with divinity. Without any hesitation, he controlled his mental power to attack the brain of the brainwashed psychic, and said with a hint of sarcasm, "Why don't you guess why I am talking so much nonsense to you? Also, when we fight with our mental power next, will there be someone outside who will follow the mental power connection between you and me to find your body? I'm not sure if you know one thing. That is, there is a psychic in the Empire whose psychic power is specifically restrained by you." Long before today's incident, after Chen Ming just knew how the brainwashed psychic controlled ordinary people, Chen Ming asked the boss if his psychic power could be used to save people. The answer is no. The brainwashed psychic controls those people more tightly and deeply into the consciousness of everyone. When a person is affected by a brainwashed psychic, this person has become a puppet of the brainwashed psychic, and there is no way to change it. But for the brainwashed psychic itself, the boss feels that there is something to say. So after today's incident, Chen Ming immediately went to the boss to explain the situation in detail and the help he needed. This time it is not about saving people, but about finding the brainwashed psychic. The hive mind of the brainwashed psychic creates a special connection between all the people controlled by him. As the boss of the psychic who specializes in human spiritual abilities, it would be strange if he could not find the connection. And the boss was able to discover the special condition of Chen Ming's consciousness. Now, when Chen Ming has locked part of the consciousness of the brainwashed psychic through consciousness hedging, it is not impossible to find the main body of the brainwashed psychic. How could the cooperation between Chen Ming, the Minister of Psychic, and the Empire really only target those 60 million people? Without 60 million today, the brainwashed psychic may control 600 million tomorrow. Don't do too much to treat the symptoms instead of the root cause. The symptoms and the root cause must be treated together. Start from this moment. The brainwashed psychic felt the danger from Chen Ming in a real sense today. He didn't dare to waste time responding to Chen Ming. He could only desperately think of a better way to get out than the last time. But at this critical moment, he couldn't think of a suitable method at all. He could only continue to use the old method to tear open a small piece of the divine brain in his consciousness space to split out a smaller brain, so that the consciousness link between Chen Ming and him could be transferred to the small brain. Such a split meant that Chen Ming could see the face inside the brainwashed psychic's brain clearly. The facial information can be directly transmitted by Chen Ming to the Queen of Insects, and then stored in the storage unit by the Queen of Insects and repaired immediately. Then submit the repaired photo data to the Minister of Psychic Power and let him search the Empire database to confirm the location of each person. Anyway, the situation of the people controlled by the brainwashed psychic has been completely exposed by the Empire, and there is no need to hide it. Now all we have to do is to arrest all these people without leaving any. It's just that the troubles encountered this time will be more than Chen Ming's own. But this is the Empire's own business. Chen Ming's goal is always the brainwashed psychic itself. Although the brainwashed psychic barely escaped from the consciousness space by separating the brain, he escaped from Chen Ming's pursuit. But he didn't have time to be happy. The next moment, Chen Ming's figure appeared next to a body he controlled. Without saying a word, Chen Ming once again stabbed his mental power into the body, once again building a mental link between him and the brainwashed psychic, dragging each other into the consciousness space. This is the disadvantage of the hive mind network. Every time this separation occurs, the thread of consciousness and psychic energy will be broken at the end. Before this thread is completely broken, it is enough for the boss to help Chen Ming find the next person who is related to the consciousness of the brainwashed psychic, so that Chen Ming can continue to chase him. Just separating a part of the brain cannot get rid of Chen Ming's pursuit. And this time when Chen Ming chased him, the brainwashed psychic did not separate the small brain directly. Instead, he said to Chen Ming, "You know that every time you do this, someone will die, right?" "I know, but they are all killed by you. If you die honestly, won't they die?" Chen Ming was not affected by any words at all, and his mental power rushed towards the brainwashed psychic mercilessly. The brainwashed psychic could only be forced to give up part of his brain again and get out. If he was really caught by Chen Ming, he would definitely die. And this time he deliberately talked to Chen Ming just to adjust the position of the head inside the brain of his consciousness space symbol, so that some unimportant people can be exposed first and protect the other important people under his control. He successfully actively adjusted the position of the face and once again escaped from Chen Ming's tracking. But then, Chen Ming appeared next to a body in the empire he controlled like a ghost. And this time, Chen Ming did not give him the opportunity to talk nonsense again, and the brainwashed psychic could only be forced to tear his brain again, and he didn't even have time to adjust the position of the face. Even if the brainwashed psychic personally controlled so many people, it was unlikely that he would be sure who was in the brain that constituted the symbol of his consciousness space. At most, he confirmed some really critical tasks and roughly divided out a part of the space and divided people of different importance into different areas of his consciousness space brain. When he divided the brain, he couldn't confirm how many people he protected. He could only roughly know that he must have lost a lot of important people. But at this moment, he didn't dare to think too much, nor did he dare to resist at all. He could feel that a force independent of Chen Ming was madly tracking him. As long as he dared to hesitate for a moment, he would be completely locked by this force. Wuan. Outside the consciousness space, Chen Ming barely got some news from the outside world through the Queen of Insects and the afterglows. As he hunted down the brainwashed psychic, a large number of casualties occurred in the empire. There was almost no way to suppress the news of casualties, because a small number of people suddenly died on almost every planet in the empire. And what was even more troublesome and terrifying was that all the people in a galaxy in a prosperous star field in the empire died almost at the same time. The tragic situation was telling the terrifying coverage rate of the brainwashed psychic's psychic power. And this was only a small matter, because as the loss of personnel increased, the number of afterglow cores originally prepared by the Empire was a little insufficient. And some of the Empire's afterglow cores were indeed affected by the psychic power of the brainwashed psychic. Chen Ming's afterglow core was already trying its best to fill the gap, but before the core was dispatched, there would still be many places that lost government control. After losing government management, all kinds of bad things happened at the same time in almost every corner of the Empire. The Empire can only rely on the top psychics of the Empire and the garrisons in different places to use force to supervise different star systems. The number of people who died because of Zhuijing may not even be as many as the number of deaths caused by the subsequent chaos. However, when Chen Ming asked the Minister of Psychic Power through Yu Hui whether he needed additional help, he was rejected. It was said that the Empire had the ability to solve these small problems. Then Chen Ming was relieved, and he could continue to track the brainwashed psychic. And just when he once again established a mental link with the brainwashed psychic, the brainwashed psychic suddenly shouted at Chen Ming, "Wait, I admit it." At this time, the size of his brain was less than 1/3 of the previous one, and the consciousness space exuded the meaning of mental exhaustion. But Chen Ming did not listen to him at all, and continued to rush towards him with full spirit. No matter what he said today, it would not be possible for Chen Ming to give up the opportunity to kill the brainwashed psychic. This is the best chance to kill him. The brainwashed psychic also understood Chen Ming's thoughts. He knew that he had no chance to bargain. The brain in his consciousness space suddenly split open completely, exposing the real head of the brainwashed psychic inside. Chen Ming was about to chase. The split brain of the brainwashed psychic alone formed a new complete brain. Compared with the previous small brains, this brain contains all the people controlled by the brainwashed psychic. All the remaining people who are still controlled by him are in it. He abandoned all his controlled objects and only wanted to escape. The bald head disappeared in the consciousness space in an instant. The boss also told Chen Ming the coordinates of the next location where the brainwashed psychic was found through the mental connection with Chen Ming. But the location of this coordinate is after the wormhole. The brainwashed psychic really abandoned everything in the Empire, maybe even including his own body. He pinned his hopes on the leader of the negative matter group who had escaped from Chen Ming's colony some time ago. If it was someone else, it would be easy to deal with, but Chen Ming had no way to track this person down in a short time. What a pity. Chen Ming really had no way to track down the person who was the first to be exposed and the first to escape from his influence. But at least as the brainwashed psychic survived, his influence within the empire had been completely wiped out. What Chen Ming did had solved a major concern for the empire. The concept of the left path was truly completely wiped out from the empire. Just after Chen Ming confirmed through his boss that the brainwashed psychic finally escaped from the direction of the leader of the negative matter research group that had caused trouble on his territory some time ago. Chen Ming suddenly remembered that he seemed to have the phone number of that leader. The brainwashed psychic controlled the body, so he should not directly throw away the terminal of the body. So Chen Ming took out his terminal and made a call. What he didn't expect was that the call was actually broadcast. Chen Ming's expression suddenly became serious. Because this call can be broadcast, it means that the terminal receiving the communication must be within the coverage range of the communication signal of his colony. Chen Ming immediately thought about the signal coverage range of his colony. However, as he thought about it carefully, he suddenly found that this seemed to be a very large area. He had never properly developed the star field behind the wormhole before, because the way of development by the Zerg was too rough. So Chen Ming wanted to use the afterglow to slowly develop the world behind the wormhole. And he had just completely controlled Yuhui, so the development progress could be said to be quite slow. Chen Ming couldn't just leave those galaxies to be developed there, so in order to roughly control the surrounding areas, he dropped reconnaissance equipment in many places. These devices, of course, need communication signals to transmit the information they detected. Therefore, the actual coverage of his communication signal is quite large. As a result, he can't narrow down the location information of the brainwashed psychic to a location that can be determined immediately. If you really want to find it, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. But you have to try it. While Chen Ming tried to track the sense signal with psychic power, he continued to pay attention to the situation of the broadcast phone. Then, something even more unexpected happened to him. The phone was connected. But there was no talk on the other end of the phone. But Chen Ming knew very well that the other end must be a brainwashed psychic. Chen Ming asked into the phone, "Hello? Where are you? Can you tell me?" The brainwashed psychic, who was originally quite cheerful and loved to talk to Chen Ming, hung up the phone in silence and seemed to be quite stimulated. At the same time, Chen Ming's attempt to track him also failed. The signal he was tracking suddenly lost all traces, and there was no possibility of tracking at all. There was no way. Chen Ming could only put this matter aside for the time being. At least when the brainwashed psychic left, all the external forces that could be used were stripped away, and he would not pose too many threats to himself, at least in the near future. Moreover, the psychic power of the brainwashed psychic needs people, at least life forms with a certain degree of intelligence, to work. And in the area covered by Chen Ming's communication signal, all planets with life forms have been left with monitoring equipment. Although the large range makes it difficult for Chen Ming to track the brainwashed psychic, it also makes it difficult for him to find the object to activate the ability. Unless he can find a way to enter the Scarlet or the survivors. Just now, when Chen Ming tried to track the communication signal, he suddenly couldn't find it. This was very similar to the situation when he found the survivor communicator and tried to track the survivor through the survivor communicator but couldn't track it. The survivors themselves have bad intentions and have a high level of monitoring of the area around the wormhole. Chen Ming doesn't believe that they can't find the brainwashed psychic if they run away. And once they find the brainwashed psychic, they will inevitably make contact. Maybe they will find a way to capture the brainwashed psychic. After all, it is a good research object for human civilization. But it is also possible that they will cooperate with the brainwashed psychic. After all, their goals are the same. Scarlet, survivor. Chen Ming felt that he needed to increase the frequency of entering the Scarlet dimension in the future. Coincidentally, he also learned some interesting abilities about Scarlet from the brainwashed psychic, and he had to experiment with them. But now, Chen Ming shook his head, turned around, and contacted the Minister of Psionics, intending to continue to cooperate with them to deal with all the remaining things in the Empire. This cooperation lasted for 2 months. The impact of the brainwashed psychic's actions on the Empire is not limited to the 60 million people. Because during Chen Ming's pursuit of the brainwashed psychic, the brainwashed psychic abandoned part of his brain several times, and he finally abandoned all the people controlled by him and escaped alone. Chen Ming did not hold back on these people. Because once he stopped and did not kill that part of the brain directly, the brainwashed psychic would have a chance to escape from his pursuit with almost no loss. And this series of pursuits eventually led to the death of the empire's population, reaching 4.3 billion. Among them, several colonized planets completely controlled by brainwashed psychics turned into a purgatory. The number of people controlled by brainwashed psychics far exceeded anyone's initial estimate. This number is actually the population of a high-density habitable planet in the Empire, and it is not even as different from the number of people who died on Yunluo Star in Kamo Star region. But when these 4.3 billion people are scattered throughout the Empire, including members of different social organizations such as the government, the army, and local organizations, and even important members, the impact of this incident cannot be minimized. The high-level officials of the government and the army died, and the core members and personnel of Yuhui arranged by the Empire were there to fill the gap. But the high-level officials of other civil organizations and different companies died in unclear circumstances, and they must be explained. Moreover, the people in the government and the army are not just machines that know how to work. The dead also have family and friends, and there are relationships between superiors and subordinates. This has led to many problems in government departments in many places. There are not many cases in the army. After all, the rules of the army are stricter than the law. But the chaos at the government level is really not limited to the chaos caused by the death of management. It is not to the point of rebellion. But as long as there are some people with ulterior motives secretly guiding, things will go in an unpredictable direction. Especially when the Empire announced after the incident that the cause of the incident was related to the psychic leader of the cult Ludzwitching. There are also many rats lurking in the gutter coming out, and some even raised the banner of Zwitching, wanting to inherit their legacy. Such a big empire is always not short of dark corners. The rats were dealt with quickly. It was just that the problems at the government level did cause a lot of trouble for the empire's reorganization. However, as long as there were no problems with the main body, the problems in other branches were basically not a problem. Even if many people died in the main body, not all of them died. It was not easy for brainwashed psychics to infiltrate the empire. After all, the empire's attitude towards psychics was relatively general in the early days, and many protective measures were taken against psychics. It was not the case that a government department would be completely destroyed if it was invaded. After all, there were still some people who were not affected and controlled. At the same time, not everyone was overwhelmed by sadness and pain. There would always be someone who found opportunities in this incident and took the initiative to cater to the empire's way of doing things. They, as well as the Yuhui corps controlled by Chen Ming, are the mainstay of the empire now. What's more, before Chen Ming really started to act, the Grand Archon was already prepared to face these problems. 2 months. It was enough to thoroughly deal with all the problems on the surface. The remaining underlying problems would take time to slowly smooth out. Chen Ming had a headache for quite some time. He needed to deploy the Empire's Afterglow cores to where they should go. Because his psychic ability could see the ability bias of the alpha-level Afterglow cores, he could arrange each alpha core to the most suitable position. It didn't need to be too precise, just a general direction, and someone would help him fill in the remaining details. But no matter what, this was a matter involving an empire, and it couldn't be easy. Chen Ming also thought about refusing to do this. But if he didn't refuse, every Afterglow core in the empire would have to go through his hands before it could be used. So it was a bit difficult for him to refuse. The Empire and Afterglow had been fighting for hundreds of years. Afterglow kept making blood in the rear and going to the front line. The Empire also kept capturing Afterglow in the middle of the battle. Some of the Afterglow cores that were willing to surrender to the Empire had already been used. The vast majority of the rest either refused to surrender or were not easy to use. After all, the Empire banned the use of AI above the Delta level after the AI war, and only secret industries that were not open to the public could use Afterglow. Of course, the restrictions on artificial intelligence technology should be gradually relaxed over time, just like the restrictions on psychics. In short, Chen Ming can access all the Afterglow cores captured during the war between the Empire and Afterglow. The specific number. It can only be said that there are about 100 alpha-level afterglow cores in the afterglow star field controlled by Chen Ming and ready to be relocated. And the afterglow cores that the Empire is going to place in various parts of the Empire to replace the lost personnel. There are only about 300 alpha-level in the first batch, and the remaining beta and gamma are countless. Each one was handed over to Chen Ming to judge the direction before entering the job. This can only be said. They gave too much. Even if it is said that most of the afterglow cores need to be used in various parts of the Empire, otherwise the Empire may not be stable. But the remaining ones are also very important to Chen Ming, and he will really lack these afterglow cores in the future. Moreover, the afterglow cores used in the Empire itself can also bring him some extra gains after he finishes hunting down the brainwashed psychics. Those afterglows first passed through his hands and were controlled by him before entering the Empire. His power has also penetrated the Empire thoroughly. He can use the afterglow cores to exert different influences on the Empire from all aspects. Chen Ming may not necessarily use this power, but if he holds this power in his hands, he can save a lot of trouble. In addition, there is the relationship between Chen Ming and the Empire. Chen Ming is often willing to maintain friendly relations with the Empire. But due to the special power of his own, the Empire is a collective existence, not an existence that can decide the long-term development direction based on personal preferences. So it is absolutely impossible to have any close connection with him. And now, this short-distance cooperation, which only 3 people knew about, allowed Chen Ming to have more exchanges with the highest leader and the second-in-command of the Empire. Let the few people who really top the entire Empire know that Chen Ming really doesn't bother to care about so many things in the Empire in many cases. He really doesn't have any ideas about the Empire. Although this can't change a group, it is enough to change the leader of a group. In general, it is also beneficial. At least it can allow him to get more help from the ruling class. After a few more cooperations in the future, many things will become logical. He is not short of material benefits now. It's good to have some benefits in this regard. As the matter of Zhuijing and the brainwashed psychic ended completely in the Empire, Chen Ming also discovered a situation. That is, things are always interdependent. Zhuijing made trouble, causing his satellite to collapse and causing him to fall into scarlet. But it also allowed him to find the key weakness of the brainwashed psychic and took this opportunity to completely eliminate the danger of Zhuijing. Of course, this also led to a large number of deaths in the Empire and a crisis of government chaos. But it was the crisis of the Empire that allowed the Empire to expel the poisonous blood and walk more smoothly on the road of development. It also gave Chen Ming the opportunity to extend his hands into all aspects of the Empire. In general, it was not a loss, because Chen Ming had other extra gains. Tianzhan. His existence and his psychic power made it possible to completely stabilize negative matter in the past 2 months. Tianzhan's psychic power is not just purification. His psychic power is more like a special means of stabilization, like the specialization of the ability of Gaia planetary consciousness, the existence of psychic power. It can transform all unstable things that originally existed in the normal universe into stable existence. It was also his psychic power that allowed the satellite that originally existed in the phase and was close to collapse due to negative matter to erase the negative effects brought by negative matter, leaving only the positive effects of negative matter. The black hole dimension represented by these stable negative matter even has greater research value than the nightmare of the plane itself. Moreover, Tianzhan's psychic power and the special connection between the fairy tree and Gaia consciousness. It also truly made the manufacture of the life seeding device. No, it should be called the Gaia seeding device now possible. Chen Ming's satellite was the first laboratory object of the Gaia seeder. At the same time, Tianzhan's psychic power also made it possible to erase Scarlet. Chen Ming's most troublesome problems in the Empire and the universe are Zhuijing and Scarlet. Zhuijing has completely stopped making waves. Scarlet is the only thing Chen Ming really needs to worry about. And now, the last thing Chen Ming needs to worry about has also found a solution. He only needs to cultivate Tianzhan for a while, and Scarlet may no longer be a problem. Chen Ming did not pay too much attention to the Empire's affairs. He had done everything he should do. He should always pay attention to his own affairs. He could remember all the scattered things he was doing or arranging others to do. He would check on them from time to time to see the progress. As time passed, Chen Ming had more and more people to use. The only project he really needed to keep an eye on was his own battleship design project. And the progress of the battleship project was approaching the end as half a year passed. Before, Chen Ming spent half a year planning and deciding the type of the main control system of the spacecraft, and then spent several months deciding the direction of the spacecraft's energy source, engine, armor, and weapons. In the past 6 months, he would naturally decide all these things. The energy source of the battleship was always the antimatter engine when it was first considered. Compared with any technology of the same era, this thing is a dimensionality reduction attack. As long as it can be matched with a biomass engine that plays an auxiliary role to ensure that the spacecraft will not be in a critical situation of energy shortage at any time, it can almost be said to perfectly meet Chen Ming's needs. However, the engine that was finally decided to be installed was a composite engine that Chen Ming had made experimentally, which combined the effects of antimatter engines and biomass engines. Once the mechanical and biological fusion technology is mastered, it must be used. The final test results of such a composite engine are indeed very good. But when Chen Ming brought out the engine, many researchers in the project team who were responsible for the engine were worried about the stability and adaptability of this half-mechanical and half-biological technology. Chen Ming actually had a similar idea at the beginning. But after he replicated several composite engines and tested them on spacecraft of different models and levels, no one had this problem. The composite engine of the spacecraft is equipped with the latest battery technology based on energy crystal technology. This battery technology uses not only the energy crystals made by Chen Ming himself. Since he shared some biological technologies, including energy crystal technology, with Whooping some time ago, almost all technologies have undergone several iterations. Energy crystal technology has just been developed, and there is a lot of development prospects. The empire is so big that there must be someone who can see these and develop the energy crystal technology in a very short time. Today, the energy crystal worms that produce energy crystals have undergone many extractions and fusions of species genes that are rare in the empire. The crystals produced have greatly improved the energy storage limit and efficiency compared to the previous ones, and the energy self-dissipation efficiency has been extremely reduced. After further battery packaging, the energy dissipation efficiency of the crystal battery is almost close to zero. It has very good performance in terms of long-term endurance of spacecraft and short-term high-energy use. Even in the design of the main battleship, the energy crystal technology has been iterated several times. The original engine and supporting equipment that had been installed on the spacecraft were removed several times, which was a little time-consuming. But this time is definitely worth wasting. The spacecraft's engine is of course equipped with additional functional engine accessories, including the hyperspace channel engine and jump engine, as well as the hyperspace channel jump engine that has also been iterated several times. However, the spacecraft does not carry a phase engine. The reason is also very simple. This battleship built from the corpse of the leader of the phase beast has that power. It just so happens that the Empire's psychic technology has also been developing rapidly in recent times. Chen Ming relies on psychic power to study and interpret various relics, such as the Purgatory Core and the Synchrotron Core obtained from the Shining Civilization, as well as the psychic theory that the Empire has exchanged from the survivors. The Empire has a way to start studying various psychic things. In the beginning, just follow Chen Ming's initial thinking of studying the Purgatory Core, and later there will be people who will integrate these technologies and study other things to produce results. The Empire has many ways to replicate these psychic creations. Although the effect may not be as good as the original product of the Shining Civilization, this is only the first step taken by the Empire. And these methods can be completely transformed into power for regulating the phase power of the phase beast after special research. Although the phase power of the phase beast is not psychic power, this special power is similar to psychic power in nature. It is precisely because of the special advantages brought by the structure of the spacecraft itself that the type of Chen Ming's battleship has basically been determined at present. Phase battleship. The specific name has not been decided yet. Chen Ming just has some ideas. It depends on his mood to see how it will turn out. The battleship not only has engines, but its armor has also been improved during this period. The innermost layer of the spacecraft's composite armor is the phase behemoth scales on the corpse of the phase behemoth patriarch, which have been modified by the Queen. These scales not only have a protective effect, but they are also the basis for the phase behemoth to use phase power to a certain extent, so they cannot be replaced. And if it is just used as the lining of the armor, there is really no better material. In the armor outside the innermost layer, it is covered with the most common biological material Chen Ming currently has, the Zerg carapace, with an additional buffer layer inside. Although the Zerg carapace is a very common material, the Zerg carapace itself has a very powerful effect. Moreover, the Zerg carapace arranged in the armor is a new type of Zerg armor that cannot be effectively used on medium and low-level spacecraft, and specially strengthened by the Queen for the main battleship. The name is still the same, but the difference in strength is huge. The outer armor is still the metal armor like other spaceships. The outermost layer of the spaceship armor is coated with a layer of artificial star-eating fluid, which can also be regarded as a layer of star-eating armor after solidification. The existence of this layer of star-eating armor is not to allow the main battleship to enter the star, but for other purposes. Because the material ratio of the artificial star-eating fluid has also changed in the past 6 months. The original effect of the star-eating fluid is simply to prevent the high heat and radiation of the star. But someone in the Empire saw an opportunity and changed the actual direction of the star-eating fluid by changing the ratio. The liquid that originally prevented the effects of energy such as heat and radiation can limit the actual effects of energy weapons to a greater extent. Only a thin layer is needed to reduce the direct hit effect of most energy weapons by more than 20%. This layer of star-eating fluid armor itself is an additional attachment and can be easily repaired. And this is the overall structure of the armor. There is no need to mention the biomass material inside the armor. The best shell material that the Queen can make will be used on it, and Chen Ming has repeatedly optimized and strengthened it, so the quality is there. The metal material of the spacecraft armor is even more outrageous. When Chen Ming first built this battleship, he thought of it as his most important spaceship and the flagship of the fleet. In addition, the corpse of the leader of the phase behemoth is not an easy material to get. Chen Ming can't kill the behemoth that protects the phase space as material after getting the phase from the phase space. Therefore, when he designed and built this battleship, he did not consider the issue of mass production at all. He just piled up materials wherever he could. In the end, the proportion of ordinary materials in the spacecraft armor layer was less than 20%, and high-level materials accounted for 46%. The rest were all special-level materials that Chen Ming invested in without considering the cost and only looking at the best effect. The manufacturing cost is extremely high, and the maintenance cost is even more endless. But Chen Ming also thought clearly that if he only had one such spaceship, it would be no problem with the support of the entire Zerg and the afterglow that is now developing rapidly. There were many people in the project team who complained that Chen Ming was squandering resources. After all, those high-level and special materials could be used to build more battleships. However, as Chen Ming later made public the situation of several conflicts between the Zerg battleship and Leviathan, such voices became much less. How important it is to have a top combat force of equal strength when facing the top combat force. Whether this top combat force is a psychic or a powerful spaceship. But even so, there are still people who say something nonsense. For example, why didn't Chen Ming use such materials to build Titan-class ships? Let's not talk about whether there are phase monsters that can reach the size of Titan. The size difference between the battleship and the Titan alone can cost Chen Ming half his life, and he can't get so many materials at all. The subsequent maintenance and repairs can completely drag down Chen Ming's economy. What's more, the theory of Titan-class ships was only half a year ago, and the theoretical research has not been completed yet. It's all nonsense to build Titan ships. Chen Ming was too lazy to pay attention to them, and continued to do what he should do. Anyway, he is the leader of the project, and his ideas are the most important in the design of this battleship. So the shield of this battleship was also installed with a psychic shield under Chen Ming's mandatory request. The shield was one of the earliest issues discussed at the beginning of the design of this spacecraft. But Chen Ming looked down on most of the shields at that time. So he forcibly suppressed the problem of shields. Until the plane Nightmare was killed, the Empire had a certain degree of psychic knowledge after studying the plane Nightmare's psychic shield, which was enough to replicate the psychic shield. Chen Ming decided the direction of the development of the spacecraft shield. This decision was absolutely correct. The Empire had no shield that could match the effectiveness of the psychic shield. As for weapons, which can be regarded as external objects compared to the main battleship itself, Chen Ming has been developing them. Main weapons can't just be used by amplifying the power of large weapons. When designing each main battleship, there will be a dedicated person to design various weapons specially used to match the main battleship. It can maximize the advantages of the main battleship. For example, the main offensive weapon that Chen Ming is most familiar with, the thermal pulse laser. This thing has a very terrifying energy consumption, and when used, it occupies most of the energy supply of the spaceship. General spacecrafts will have a higher radiation value when firing. Only battleships like the offensive, which have extremely thick armor and almost useless shields, can save a lot of energy to adapt to such weapons. So when Chen Ming designed his own battleship, he fully considered the nature and advantages of the ship, as well as his own ideas. In the end, based on his knowledge of space and the power of phase space, he developed a space distortion generator called Chaos. Weapons that attack from the spatial level. It is equivalent to an extension of some of Chen Ming's abilities. Although the effect of space distortion was not very good when fighting the jellyfish Leviathan some time ago, the jellyfish Leviathan is an electromagnetic life. Space weapons are definitely the best choice for most types of enemies. To this day, most of the structures of the battleship designed by Chen Ming have been manufactured, and only the last few steps of the ship development stage are left, and the assembly, optimization, and factory process can be carried out. At the latest in 3 months, the development process of this battleship will be completely completed. In Chen Ming's office, Chen Ming closed the reports that the main battleship project teams had recently sent out on his computer and breathed a sigh of relief. That's about it for today. He will have more time to look at these things when he starts to finish the phases in a few days. Thinking about this, Chen Ming stood up from his desk and prepared to leave. Although he can now focus on doing only one thing for about 10 days without sleep. But his life is not just about work, and he is not alone now. Moreover, before the war between the Empire and the Mechanical Clan began, Chen Ming had already discussed the time of his wedding with Bai Quan. Since the war ended faster than expected, the wedding should be brought forward accordingly. The wedding is still 3 months away. Chen Ming raised his mouth slightly and was about to turn off the computer. Suddenly, he saw 2 messages sent in succession on the computer at this time. One from the Minister of Psychic Power and one from the 14th Legion. Thinking of dealing with distant things before dealing with nearby things, Chen Ming first looked at the message from the Minister of Psychic Power, which contained a document. The content of the document is the archaeological progress inside the Shining Civilization Cultural Memorial Hall that Chen Ming discovered some time ago in the underground of a planet in the pulsar system where the jellyfish Leviathan first appeared. The Empire sent a total of 2 teams to investigate this relic. One team went from the beginning of the Shining Civilization historical record to the end, and the other team went from the end to the beginning. The team from the beginning to the end has determined the history of the Shining Civilization in the primitive biological period and the intelligent life period, and will soon be able to study the history of the Shining Civilization entering civilization. This has little to do with Chen Ming, but the big deal is the group that studies from the bottom, that is, from the period of the demise of the Shining Civilization. Their progress is not as ideal as the other team. After all, the past era does not necessarily require text to be recorded in detail. The span of the early era is long, and biological evolution can be traced. As long as there are enough antiquities, something can always be analyzed. But starting from the bottom to study the end of the Shining Civilization must be coordinated with text. And the text in this relic has been worn out by time, and there is no clue at all. The relics of the Shining Civilization in other places do not have any text records like this relic. It can only be said that the pulses of pulsars in the galaxy have a great impact on many things, causing electronic equipment to be damaged and rusted, and also causing these words to be worn out and completely unreadable. Even so, this archaeological team is still trying hard to rely on the Empire's understanding of the Shining to conduct research. Moreover, recently, they found a strange place on the bottom floor of the Shining Civilization Cultural Center. In a certain layer of this cultural center close to the bottom floor, there is a row of rusted equipment. Through an investigation with a device specially used for archaeology, the team members found some kind of imprint on the wall next to it. That is, there is a device that creates three-dimensional projections for a long time nearby, and then leaves projection imprints on the wall. The archaeological team took all the photos and handed them over to their superiors, and finally to the Minister of Psychic Power. The reason why the Minister of Psychic Power sent the photos to Chen Ming. It was the appearance of those projected imprints. When Chen Ming read the document to the end, he had already discovered that the appearance of these imprints was the appearance of Leviathan he had seen. Chen Ming had seen a total of 4 types of Leviathan before: scavengers, nightmares of planes, planet eaters, and tricolor jellyfish. In the past 6 months, when he asked Yuhui to start exploring the surrounding galaxies, he encountered 2 more, and he killed them all. They were a Leviathan hatched from an egg that disguised itself as a habitable planet, but actually devoured all the creatures on the planet, and a crystalline Leviathan that existed in the asteroid belt of a certain galaxy. At the beginning, Chen Ming did not think that the latter was a Leviathan, but just some kind of space creature, because they were scattered in the asteroid belt at the beginning. But when Chen Ming was dealing with them, they suddenly merged into one, forming a crystal monster. Of course, this did not affect Chen Ming's final solution to it, and dragged the bodies of the 2 Leviathans back to the Gaia galaxy, threw them into orbit, and built a space station dedicated to studying them. During this period, the 2 new Leviathan space stations also had their own results. The Leviathan in the egg is very special. It will find some suitable planets and inject eggs into the planets. And then the eggs injected into the planets will convert the interior of the planet into nutrition for the Leviathan in the process. And this kind of nutrition is a very scarce volatile liquid resource in the Empire. Even the gaseous state is very valuable. This Leviathan space station studies the principle of this conversion. And the other crystal Leviathan space station has recently made a spacecraft crystal coating. Just a small layer can improve the structural strength of the hull to a certain extent. Of course, Chen Ming used this technology in the design of his main battleship, so he has a deep impression of all Leviathans. Even if he only saw a silhouette, he could be sure that these marks were the marks of Leviathan. In addition to the nightmare of the plane, he saw the traces of other Leviathans in the photos recorded by these archaeological teams. And there are more Leviathans that Chen Ming has never seen. There are at least hundreds of them in a row. And at the edge of this row of Leviathan projections, there is a very blurry projection of a star map. The archaeological team is not sure what the star map means. After all, the star map should be 3-dimensional, and it is really difficult to see anything with a 2-dimensional projection. But since this star map is placed next to these Leviathan projections, it means that these star maps are definitely related to these Leviathans. The Minister of Psychic Power hopes that Chen Ming can check the star map to see the situation. After all, this may mean that Leviathan has a close relationship with the Shining Civilization. If this relationship really exists, then Leviathan is likely to be related to the survivors, which can explain quite a lot of things. Chen Ming thought for a while and replied to the Minister of Psychic Power that he knew the news. He will do it, but not in a hurry. Then, Chen Ming opened the message sent by the 14th Legion. The message from the 14th Legion was not sent by Bai Quan, but by the Legion commander. Although the Legion commander stayed at the front line between the Empire and Yuhui all year round, Chen Ming had not met him many times, but Chen Ming still had a very good impression of the Legion commander. He came here at this time, probably because he had something to ask. Chen Ming looked at the content of the message. There were no documents this time, and it was basically the content dictated by the Legion commander. It was probably about the fact that Yuhui was preparing to retreat when the Empire won the war with the mechanical race and showed its determination to deal with the nearby enemies. At that time, the Minister of Psychic Energy came to ask Chen Ming about this matter. Chen Ming had no objection anyway. He only controlled the part that Yu Hui had separated and did not control the main force of Yu Hui. Especially after Yu Hui confirmed his existence, they were very wary of the foreign Yu Hui. Chen Ming's attempts were stopped several times, and the distance was too far, so Chen Ming was too lazy to care about them. What's more, he already had a replica of Kleka. This replica only needs to be optimized by his psychic power, and it can do everything that Kleka can do. He even thought that when the Empire pursued Yu Hui's army, he could take advantage of it and get some cores that did not need to be used in the Empire, but could be taken away. So he had no objection to this matter. So the 14th Legion was responsible for the pursuit. Yu Hui and the Empire had been in friction for so many years, and if they wanted to escape, they had to get the Empire's consent first. The pursuit has been going on for the past 6 months. But just a few days ago, Yu Hui, who was still retreating, suddenly became silent. They disappeared on the way of escape. Only countless supplies piled up in different star systems were left, allowing the Empire's pursuing troops to seize them. Chen Ming thought of many situations. For example, Yu Hui completely surrendered and reintegrated into the Empire. Or collective suicide, rather die than surrender. But losing was something Chen Ming had never expected. Yu Hui suddenly disappeared en masse while being pursued by the Empire. This situation puzzled Chen Ming. Generally speaking, if they disappear, they just disappear. It may be that they have mastered some special means and escaped. This is normal. But all the supplies that were supposed to be taken away with the retreat were left behind for the Empire. This situation was obviously very wrong. It just so happens that Chen Ming is free recently. The spacecraft design is nearing completion and needs a thorough self-inspection before the final closing phase begins. He could have taken the initiative to intervene in this matter and investigate it. The next day, Chen Ming still drove his supreme point, and after several jumps, he successfully arrived outside the Empire, the frontline headquarters of the 14th Army Corps in the area where they had been at war with the Machine Tribe in the past 6 months. The location of the headquarters is an afterglow military planet occupied by the Legion. With advance notice, Chen Ming arrived at the planet's ground port smoothly. The Legion commander is already waiting for him here. As soon as Chen Ming cleared the spaceship, the Legion commander took the initiative to greet him and extended his hand to him. Chen Ming shook his hand and went straight to the point and asked, "What's the specific situation? Are all Yu Hui still missing? Are there still no clues?" It is true that they are all still missing. There are clues, but I feel it is a bit difficult to figure out what is going on. Come with me first. The Legion commander signaled to Chen Ming and took Chen Ming on the shuttle boat to the nearest military base, which was also the real command center on the front line. After boarding the spaceship, the Legion commander placed a terminal on the small table in the shuttle boat and projected a star map of the Empire's border. The Legion commander then handed several documents to Chen Ming. While Chen Ming read the documents, he explained to him the general situation when they were chasing Yu Hui. Simply put, the retreat of the Afterglow army was not a mass escape. They still maintained a complete social structure. Moreover, they didn't actually show any obvious desire to retreat at the beginning, but continued to pretend there as they were, as if they didn't care at all about the Empire's attack on the machine race and the end of the machine race. During the war with the Machine Tribe, the 14th Legion had not yet received an order to therefore, the fighting at the previous intensity has been maintained. Until one day, the Legion commander discovered that Yu Hui's fighting power with the Legion was obviously much weaker, and there was less follow-up supplementation. So some additional reconnaissance fleets were sent out. After receiving reports from the fleet that bypassed the flank for reconnaissance, the Legion commander confirmed that Yu Hui had run away, and he immediately received instructions from the Empire to track Yu Hui's escape. They actually retreated slowly after a relatively long period of preparation. Therefore, Yu Hui specially separated a considerable number of individuals to stay in their original territory, responsible for blocking the pursuing Imperial fleet. Then the Yu Hui in the star field farthest from the Empire packed up their homes and ran away. When they took away everything they could, the large-scale fleet divided into several batches chose to retreat. Judging from the traces currently investigated, the Afterglow force is divided into 5 fleets that maintain contact with each other, but have a relatively loose structure. They are the forward, middle, rear, port, and starboard fleets. They didn't scatter too far, and it seemed they planned to separate only when something really went wrong. Although the plans seemed to be good, from the fact that the Legion commander knew Yuhui's retreat plan in such detail, it was obvious that their counter-reconnaissance was not good enough. And retreating like this? Are you really afraid of being chased by the Imperial fleet and harassed to death? It's better than being beaten to death here. And they have been doing this secretly for a long time. Although we detected it very early, they retreated faster. The Legion commander raised his hand and drew a crooked trace on the terminal projection in front of him, and some corners of these traces would often diverge into small branches. Obviously, this was Yuhui's retreat route, and the end of this route is not finished yet. The front fleet of Yuhui evacuated the earliest. We really can't track them accurately and can't determine where they went. But as long as there are afterglow fleets escaping behind, they will eventually converge. So what I did before was to deliberately hang them and not kill them completely in case the earliest batch of Yuhui, who escaped before we could react, could not catch up. Chen Ming said. In the end, something unexpected happened. Yes, no one expected that. So when exactly did you disappear? The day before yesterday. The Legion commander gave a certain amount of time and said, our front fleet has almost touched the tail of the fleet behind Afterglow. Before we even had time to take action, this happened. Look at this position. The Legion commander pointed to a point on the star map. Chen Ming carefully looked at the various professional military markings on the projection, mobilized the knowledge he had learned in his mind, and said, this is the location of the final battle with Yuhui's rear troops. Yes, it was here that we killed Yuhui's last blocking force and found that there was no new fleet to resist in the future. No more. Right. Originally, Yuhui regularly sends fleets to our side to stop us. It can also be said that they use their lives to stop us and gain time to evacuate. I guess the idea is that once the distance is extended, our logistics will gradually be unable to keep up, and we can escape. They didn't realize how determined we were. After finishing one battle, we were still waiting for the next one. Yuhui suddenly stopped sending a fleet. It was very strange. At that time, I thought that it couldn't be the Afterglow fleet that had destroyed the area. There must be some reason, so I sent a ship to investigate first. And then in this position. The Legion commander pointed to the place on the star map where the last battle between Legion and Afterglow broke out more than 300 light-years away, which was near the area where the line had not been completed just now. Here we found the rear fleet of the large force retreating in the Afterglow. Chen Ming raised his hand and interrupted. Discovered the fleet? I thought only the supplies were lost to Yuhui, and then they escaped and couldn't catch up. No, maybe it's because I didn't make it clear in the message I sent you. In short, the entire retreating transport fleet is here. There are many supplies that are not too important in this fleet. I guess they want to abandon these and continue to waste time when we are about to catch up. There are indeed almost no supplies here that can keep us going, but these things are here, and we basically got them without encountering any resistance. No resistance? Chen Ming repeated the Legion leader's words in a questioning tone, wanting to know more details. The Legion commander explained, because only some automated defense weapons detected our fleet and resisted slightly, all Afterglow's spaceships became silent. Whether it's the spacecraft or the Afterglow core that should be installed in the various equipment that was taken away, everything is gone. Only the Afterglow core is missing. And there's something even stranger. We also found a group of Afterglow fleets here that are obviously trying to rear their ugly heads and fight our fleet. The ship is all there, but the Afterglow core inside is also gone. Chen Ming frowned subconsciously. He now couldn't understand why such a strange thing happened. Chen Ming could understand the disappearance of the transport fleets after we core. After all, Yuhui might choose to load all the cores together and take them away in order to preserve more cores. This is what Chen Ming did when he was collecting wool from Yuhui. But he couldn't understand the battleship without its Afterglow core. Yuhui is now being hunted by the Empire. The fleet spaceship in his hand is not used to resist, but is abandoned on the spot. Even if he set up the autopilot and automatic fire of the spacecraft, Chen Ming had tried his best to set it up as an Afterglow, but now? Chen Ming couldn't help but ask. Is there no sign of battle or other damage to the fleet behind Yuhui Palace? No, all the ships are in good condition, and there are no traces of violent dismantling. They were dismantled by normal dismantling methods. Judging from the remaining state of the spacecraft, those ships were already floating there about 10 days ago. The afterglow we fought were all dispatched earlier. It's because we didn't advance too fast, and we were deliberately fighting the fleet sent by Yuhui behind us, so we never found it. It's really outrageous. Chen Ming stared at the star map projection in front of him for a while and asked what he was thinking. Is it possible that Yuhui wants to take only the core, abandon the others, and speed off? The Legion commander gave the same answer as Chen Ming thought. Of course there is such suspicion, but there is no need to withdraw the blocking fleet. Afterglow has reached the point of life and death for them. There is really no need to save this core. Even if you set up an automatic program to automatically lock and fire when other spacecraft approaches, it is better than just leaving it there. Yes. Chen Ming nodded slightly and asked, what about the fleet in front? The reconnaissance fleet is still pursuing them. If the same thing happens to the fleet in front, it is estimated that our reconnaissance fleet will be able to discover them within today. Arrive. The Legion commander suddenly pointed out the window of the shuttle boat. Chen Ming looked around and saw that diagonally below the spacecraft was the renovated human command center of Yuhui's military base. However, the shuttle boat turned a corner during the landing and flew in another approaching direction. Let's go to the testing ground first. Earlier today, the people who were investigating happened to bring back some samples of the fleet and cargo that Yuhui left behind. There might be clues on them. Chen Ming's spiritual energy has been used for such a long time, and everyone who should know about it also knows the effects of Chen Ming's spiritual energy. As long as he can bring back some samples, he can always tell something. Chen Ming did not refuse. Since he came here, he had the idea of helping in this matter. After all, the connection between Yuhui and him can be said to be quite close, and he really wants to use the Empire's means to take advantage of Yuhui. If something goes wrong, it's not a big deal to help take a look. He was indeed curious as to what caused Yuhui to be in such a situation. The testing ground set up by the Legion was under an obviously newly constructed dome. The shuttle boat quickly landed in the open space near the dome. When Chen Ming stepped off the shuttle boat with the Legion commander, he saw a spaceship using electromagnetic capture equipment to hoist an afterglow spacecraft into the dome at the edge of the dome in the distance. The outside of the spacecraft also carries some equipment, supplies, etc. that also belong to Yuhui. When the spacecraft arrived inside the dome, it hovered in the air in the center of the dome. Under the guidance of ground personnel, the captured objects are gradually placed in different areas on the ground. Chen Ming could see that in the open space in the center of the dome, some things that had been transported earlier were placed there, waiting for someone to investigate. As for who is waiting, it goes without saying. Chen Ming and the Legion commander quickly changed their ground vehicles and entered the dome smoothly. Once inside the dome, Chen Ming keenly smelled a familiar smell from the body created by Zerg technology. He would never forget this smell in his life, because it was the smell of toxic substances produced by the mechanical nanorobots when they were operating. The source of this smell comes from the afterglow things brought back by the spacecraft. Chen Ming immediately asked the driver to stop the car and open the door. He came outside the car and took a few deep breaths. Although the smell is very light, it proves that there are not many pollutants in the air and the degree of harm is very low. Not to mention that the body Chen Ming is currently using does not have that great impact on ordinary people. Inhaling too much poisonous gas may at most cause minor problems such as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. But this is a pollutant anyway. Chen Ming immediately said to the Legion commander, who also got out of the car, "Let everyone under the dome evacuate first. Anyone who has been in contact with Yuhui's things should go to the hospital for examination." The Legion commander's expression became more serious. What's wrong? The pollutants from the mechanical race are on those things in the afterglow. The concentration is very light. I see that everyone is wearing protective clothing. It shouldn't be a big problem. But just to be on the safe side, let's get people out first. Chen Ming said so, and the Legion commander was unambiguous. He took out a walkie-talkie, adjusted the channel, and asked, "Have the contaminants on the Yuhui things you brought back been checked?" It has been checked, and everything is normal, but it has not been purified yet. Time is too tight. The Legion commander turned around and frowned, switched several communication channels, and issued several orders to order everyone who had been in contact with Yuhui today to go to the hospital for examination without a moment's hesitation. After finishing this, he looked at Chen Ming again and said, "It looks like I need to adjust the data of the inspection equipment later." Chen Ming nodded slightly, pointed to the open space in the distance, and said, "Actually, these pollutants are quite strange. I don't even feel that they are ordinary pollutants. In short, Yuhui's disappearance is likely to be related to the mechanical race." The Legion commander immediately thought of the past and said, "I remember you brought back a big star map some time ago?" Chen Ming, who was thinking about this matter, immediately said, "Yes, I remember that there seems to be no mechanical race near the place where Yuhui disappeared on the star map. But if there is a mechanical race, since we killed the nearest mechanical race star field some time ago, if you rush here." Chen Ming didn't finish his words, but his meaning was already very clear. This was something he had warned the Empire some time ago. Now, his warning appears to be coming true. The people under the dome began to withdraw one after another. Even the driver, Chen Ming, and the Legion commander, and the accompanying guards were all withdrawn. Chen Ming didn't know why he and the Legion commander, the two top psychers in the Empire, had guards around them, but it didn't matter. After confirming that everyone nearby had evacuated, he directly put a piece of biological armor on his body and approached the Scorpion, where Yuhui's things were placed. The Legion commander also followed Chen Ming's footsteps without any protection. Soon the two came to the area where Yuhui's things were placed. Things that can be seen from the high point next to the afterglow of the site are placed in 3 areas. The first area contains several afterglow combat ships. The second area houses Yuhui's cargo ships. Many of Yuhui's cargo ships are copied from the Empire's designs and are very different from their own combat ships, so they are easy to distinguish. The third area contains Yuhui's cargo. This batch of cargo seems to be completely free of contaminants. At most, it was a little bit scratched when it was moved out. Chen Ming glanced around the field several times, preparing to start with the combat spacecraft. But just before he took action, the Legion commander suddenly said to Chen Ming, "Wait a moment. There is news from the front line." He looked down at the terminal for a while and said to Chen Ming, "The front line found traces of the destroyed after we combat spaceship around where Yuhui's rear fleet stayed. It had drifted some distance away from the main force, so it was only seen now." He turned the terminal and pointed it at Chen Ming so that Chen Ming could see the photos above clearly. The content of the photos shows that Yuhui's battleship was cut off by something, and then something exploded from the inside. Whether they were escorts, expulsors, or cruisers, all the shipwrecks had similar traces. Moreover, Chen Ming also keenly observed that there were traces of metal rust on the edges of some spacecraft wreckage, which was very special. This was also confirmed by several photos of the shooting details shown to Chen Ming by the regiment commander. After reading it, the corps commander said, "The front line judged that the enemy fighting with these Yuhui fleets used a cutting weapon and a penetrating corrosive explosion weapon." Chen Ming shook his head and said, "I don't think it's the same, but I can't be sure what it is." "If you can't be sure, there's nothing to say." The corps commander continued to say to Chen Ming, "The front line said that the wreckage has been captured and is being sent to the Empire. And other reconnaissance fleets have also found some wreckage of Yuhui combat ships between the rear fleet group of Yuhui and the expected central fleet group. The number is not large, but the damage is basically the same. Then there are more and more traces of the central and front fleet groups, and many ordinary Yuhui spacecraft have left the team and scattered on their navigation tracks. This should be enough to show that the entire Yuhui army has encountered this incident." "Yeah." Chen Ming also agreed with this. "Then there should be no other news. We still have to start from here and see. We can talk about the wreckage later." "Yes, let's start from here." Chen Ming didn't say anything more. After a few steps, he came to the place where the Yuhui battleship was parked, reached out and pressed it, and completely controlled the battleship, and immediately called up the database of the spacecraft, wanting to confirm whether there was any valuable information stored in the database of these battleships brought back as samples. But Chen Ming searched carefully, and in the past few months, There was no valuable data left in the system database of the spacecraft. Chen Ming's expression did not change at all, but the metal liquid that appeared around him instantly wrapped several battleships and tried to repair them. As long as the situation of the spacecraft can be repaired to before the data was deleted, the data that should be there can always be seen. However, Chen Ming's repair also did not work. The storage units of the battleships do not store any logs for the recent period of time. There is only one possibility for this situation. That is, the Yuhui core originally installed inside this spaceship directly stored the spaceship data in their core when recording the spaceship data, without passing through the spaceship storage system. The special nature of the Yuhui core allows them to do this. Avoid some data leakage issues. Chen Ming knew that some Yuhui cores would do this. For example, Yuhui cores that were about to be upgraded from Gamma to Beta as their self-ability was optimized would do this to avoid data leakage caused by changing spacecraft later. But he didn't understand why these samples were all like this. It couldn't be that Yuhui's top management had given some orders, right? Chen Ming turned around with doubts and controlled the cargo spacecraft in the next area. The design of cargo spacecraft was imitated from the design of human spacecraft. The data obtained by these spacecrafts first passed through the spacecraft and then transmitted to Yuhui. Although the data of the cargo ship was deleted, after being repaired by psychic energy, Chen Ming saw the specific situation. These cargo ships really recorded Yuhui's battle scenes. It's not accurate to say that it was a battle, because the content of the few pictures recorded on the cargo ship was all the pictures of Yuhui's ships being killed directly. That is, the warships that were originally sailing in the universe were suddenly cut into several sections by some force, and other spacecraft were detonated by some force from inside and outside and exploded into pieces. In just a dozen seconds, dozens of battleships of the rear fleet, more cruisers, and countless combat ships were destroyed in this battle where it was not clear who the enemy was and what the attack method was. What happened next was even more bizarre. All the Afterglow took the initiative to unload their Afterglow cores and gathered them on a cargo ship that had abandoned supplies and left here. Although leaving here was Chen Ming's own imagination. After all, when the Afterglow core of the cargo ship was dismantled, the data stored in the cargo ship had been deleted. But from the actual situation, this is the fact. And in the records of several cargo ships, from beginning to end, Chen Ming did not see any enemies. The Afterglow seemed to be attacked by some invisible means. Chen Ming himself has the invisible means of attack. That is, to launch an attack by using the suppression of the normal universe by the phase space. But with Chen Ming's familiarity with the power of the phase space, the current attack on the Yuhui ship has no direct connection with the phase space. The reason lies in the exploding ships. These explosions not only have obvious flames, but also some bright pink energy fluctuations. You should know that the energy color of the Yuhui ship is usually cyan and azure. Even if it explodes, it will not explode into such pink. These energy lights are obviously related to the weapons that caused the Yuhui warship to explode. Moreover, the phase space only affects the normal universe in a physical sense. Even if something in the phase space caused the spacecraft to explode, those things should not be seen from the perspective of the normal universe. Not to mention the rust that can be seen on the details of the ship wreckage. Rust is usually caused by chemical reasons, which further proves that this situation has nothing to do with the phase space. So Chen Ming can be sure that this is not the effect achieved by using phase technology. But he couldn't analyze anything just by watching the video. He needed to see and touch the wreckage of the Yuhui warship with his own eyes for further analysis. Are there any clues? The Legion commander beside him asked Chen Ming. A little, but not much. Chen Ming pointed to the Yuhui battleships in the area next to him and several cargo ships in front of him and said, "The battleships are not valuable because the Yuhui core can store data by itself. Only these cargo ships recorded some of the situation at that time. What happened specifically? Let's talk about it on the way. On the way, we have already taken all the valuable information here." Chen Ming patted the cargo ship beside him and said, "Although the remaining wreckage over there is already being sent here, no matter how fast others send it, it will definitely not be as fast as us going there directly. In short, I'm too lazy to wait." Okay. The Legion commander had no objection to Chen Ming's idea and followed him out of the dome. As soon as he got outside, Chen Ming waved to the sky, and the highest point soon appeared in the clouds, blocking the light shining on the planet, and slowly landed on the ground. The two climbed to the highest point, and the spaceship quickly took off. After Chen Ming determined the destination for the highest point, which was near the location of the rear fleet group, he turned on the spaceship's automatic driving. It would take about a few jumps to get there. Taking advantage of the few minutes of the jump process, Chen Ming played the records he got from the cargo ship to the Legion commander in the place where he used to do research on the highest point. At the same time, he also explained to the Legion commander the situation of his analysis of the content of the repaired Yuhui cargo ship records. It can be confirmed that Yuhui was indeed attacked when retreating. Since the video the Legion commander watched had not yet been played to the time when Yuhui's warship had an accident, the Legion commander subconsciously asked, "Who?" "Not sure." Chen Ming shook his head and motioned the Legion commander to continue watching the video. And he stretched out his hand in front of him and used metal liquid to create a detailed model of thousands of Yuhui spaceships, imitating the situation in the video. There are not many scenes in the cargo ship video, and the multiple perspectives of the cargo ships are all close to the perspective of one of the Yuhui warship fleets guarding the rear fleet of Yuhui. Chen Ming roughly recorded a corner of what happened on the edge of the entire fleet and reproduced it here. This is enough for the time being. These contents alone are enough for Chen Ming to arrange the formation of these warships. And these models can almost be said to be completely manufactured according to the design of Yuhui ships after being reduced to a certain proportion, and even these model spaceships can operate like normal spaceships. Chen Ming observed the fleet he arranged with the model, trying to see something from the distribution of these warships. However, just looking at it is obviously not enough. The key is not Yuhui, but the existence of attacking Yuhui. The Legion commander on the side quickly watched the video and came to Chen Ming's side. Chen Ming raised his hand slightly when he saw this. Among the thousands of model ships in front of them, hundreds of them suddenly seemed to be chopped into several pieces by an invisible force from some position, and more model ships on the side suddenly exploded from the inside out. This was an effect specially simulated by Chen Ming, not a real slash or a real explosion. Although it was just a simulation, as Chen Ming and the Legion commander personally saw the whole process of the incident from a more third-party perspective. The expressions of both of them changed slightly. The Legion commander turned his head and looked at Chen Ming and said, "Is it accurate?" "Accurate." Do you want to try it again?" Chen Ming nodded slightly. After using psychic energy to repair the thousands of warship models, he repeated the previous operation. Let the things that happened in the video in an instant reappear in front of the two people. There was no difference from before. The eyes of the two people were focused on the chopped warships at the same time. This time they saw it more clearly. They were also more convinced that what they just saw was not an illusion. That is, the slash in the Yuhui warship group had a trajectory. Assuming that the fleet is distributed in a space the size of a football, the ships that were cut off are only distributed in a cylindrical area that runs through the football. It was the unknown attack method that attacked this cylindrical area that caused the warships in this area to be cut off. And the Yuhui warship outside this cylindrical area exploded at the same time. This is another very special point. Why are the warships within the trajectory cut off, and the warships outside the trajectory exploded? Chen Ming really couldn't figure out how this extremely strange special attack method was done. And this was not the explosion of the ship caused by external explosives, but the explosion of the ship from the inside out. The more Chen Ming thought about it, the more outrageous it seemed. He asked the Corps commander next to him, "Are there any weapons that can achieve similar effects?" The Corps commander thought about it seriously and responded, "Let's not talk about the explosion first. As for the slashing, there is no one, at least no one that performs like this. The weapon that I know of that can achieve the closest effect is an air knife used in industrial equipment. It uses special means to compress special gases and then release them. It can indeed cut a lot of things, better than high-pressure water flow. But if this kind of air knife is used in a vacuum, the gas dispersion speed is too fast, and the effect is very general. And the distance this thing can reach is too close. It can't be used in battleship fire. Chen Ming knew this kind of air knife equipment, and he had used it many times. Even if this thing has been modified and the output power is high, the nature of the gas is there, and it is impossible to use it in actual combat in a vacuum. But the others? Chen Ming kept searching in his memory. However, in the end, he could only randomly come up with a possible situation. Could it be that the color of the object that caused this damage is outside the known spectrum, and ordinary sensors cannot record its appearance? Then it rushed over and cut these ships at close range. The Legion commander pointed to a radiation-class battleship that was cut into several sections in the floating model in front of him and said, "What can directly cut off the capital ship?" No. The Legion commander rejected his own question as soon as he asked it. After all, there are really many things or abilities that can cut off capital ships. He himself can also cut off capital ships. At most, he can't do it to the extent that it has not been recorded at all. So he changed the question and said, "Close-range slashing can't cut a ship into several sections in an instant, right? And the directions in which these ships were cut and split are all different. It's better to say that it was cut into this state by a swinging electric saw." Chen Ming also knew that his idea was a bit unrealistic, so he could only say, "That's even more nonsense." Yes, to achieve such an effect. The Legion commander shook his head. Obviously, this is difficult to establish in the theoretical knowledge of the Imperial battleship weapons. The real theoretical technology may exist, but he really can't think of anything that can achieve a similar effect now. Let's not talk about this for now. Regarding those pink explosive materials, potassium ions can produce a similar purple flame when burning. If the brightness is enough, it may look pink, but the others cannot be seen. If it is energy light, it's hard to say. Putting some rare gas in it can also achieve a similar effect. We have to go and see what's going on," the Legion leader said and spread his hands directly. He really couldn't say anything else that could match the situation they saw. There are still too few clues. But he suddenly thought of something else. "Can you repair these models and slow down the speed to see from which direction and which spaceship this attack started? If the record can be slowed down to see the specific process clearly, maybe we can analyze something else based on the environmental conditions there." However, Chen Ming gave a negative answer. "No, I can't see it. The shortest frame I pulled from the cargo ship's sensor records that the entire fleet was instantly penetrated, and I can't see where it started. The speed of this thing has exceeded the speed that the sensor can record, and it is impossible to reproduce it clearly even if you want to," the Legion commander said with understanding. The cargo ship's sensor is indeed worse than that of the combat ship. Chen Ming packed up the models he had just made and said, "That's why I want to investigate on the spot. There may be clues on the dismantled warships over there." The voice fell. The High Point also completed the last jump at this time and arrived near the location of the Yuhui rear fleet. The reconnaissance fleet sent by the Legion in advance has completely surrounded the area at this time, and reconnaissance in the surrounding area to ensure safety, and soon a special engineering ship will come to deal with this ship graveyard. After the Legion commander and the person in charge of the reconnaissance fleet communicated, Chen Ming successfully drove the High Point into the encirclement of the reconnaissance fleet and approached the area full of ship wreckage. Before entering, Chen Ming was reminded by the reconnaissance fleet. They said that although some ships in the wreckage were cut off by unknown forces, their engines were not necessarily destroyed, which resulted in the automatic defense systems on some of the wreckage still running, so some attention should be paid. This was not a big deal. Chen Ming did not intend to go through the entire wreckage area. All he had to do was to take away a few wreckages that were located at the edge of the fleet and could cover the entire fleet. After spending a little time and having a small-scale conflict with the automatic defense system left by Yuhui, Chen Ming successfully achieved his goal and found several wreckages of warships in suitable locations of different Yuhui battle fleets, and captured and dragged them into the space inside the exploration ship, the Supreme Point, which was specially reserved for storing various strange things picked up during exploration. After the wreckages of several warships were dragged in, various detection equipment inside the Supreme Point was immediately activated under Chen Ming's control and used on these wreckages. He was not in a hurry to repair these wreckages to read the information in the wreckage. After all, if he directly used psychic energy to repair them, all traces would be completely erased. It is better to use various means to investigate manually first. Sometimes traces speak louder than data. Of course, the first thing Chen Ming paid attention to on these wreckages was the cutting marks that caused the warships to be cut into several sections. The cuts on these sections were almost absolutely smooth. It was easy to see that the cutting damage was absolutely caused instantly. But what was special was that rust appeared very abruptly in some places on the cut surface, which formed a very clear contrast with the smoothness of other parts of the cut surface. Logically speaking, an attack method that can directly cut a battleship does not need other auxiliary effects such as corrosion. But it just happened, which made Chen Ming even more difficult to understand. At this time, the Legion commander could also see Chen Ming operating the equipment on the spacecraft to inspect the wreckage. He speculated about this situation. Is it possible that a linear weapon with a single molecule thickness cut the ship apart? And then this single molecule material has a corrosive effect? Chen Ming asked back. Single molecules can't use their own molecules to react to cause corrosion, right? Then I really can't think of any other possibilities, and I don't think it's necessary to continue guessing in the framework. I think this may be the effect of a psychic weapon. Chen Ming nodded and said, I think so too. Let me see the other wreckage first. Okay. Chen Ming continued to control the equipment of the spacecraft and turned to the ship wreckage caused by the explosion. I want to try to extract residues from these wreckages. However, Chen Ming did not find any explosion residues. All the materials on the wreckage were materials that existed on the warship, and there was no residue of materials that had previously burst out with pink energy, light, and fire. This situation made Chen Ming more determined that this should be the damage caused by some kind of psychic weapon. After checking several times and recording a lot of data, Chen Ming dispatched psychic energy and began to repair these wreckages. The afterglow core in the cut wreckage seemed to have been unloaded because it was not damaged. However, the afterglow core in the wreckage caused by the explosion was not removed. It was successfully restored under the effect of Chen Ming's psychic power. But Chen Ming still couldn't repair the structure after the restoration and the consciousness in the core. His psychic power is not strong enough to revive life, even electronic life. But this is enough. Chen Ming successfully read out the data in the afterglow core, found the screen that recorded the afterglow fleet encountering an emergency. This time, Chen Ming finally saw something on the sensor screen. It was a mysterious white shadow that existed for only a very short time. It passed through the afterglow fleet, and all the warships close to the white shadow were cut into pieces, while the warships that were not close to the white shadow were hit by the explosive attack means at the location. This is why the afterglow fleet fell to such a state. Chen Ming didn't know what the white shadow was, but it was obviously the culprit that caused Yu Hui to become like this. I found my target. Chen Ming said something to the Legion commander. He conveniently built a projection screen next to him and projected the recorded footage he found on the wreckage so that the Legion commander could also see the mysterious white shadow. This thing passed through Yu Hui's fleet at high speed, and then cut through all the spacecraft in the entire fleet that spanned hundreds of kilometers before and after the spacecraft sensors could not record it, and then blew up all the spacecraft that it did not hit. This isn't right. The Legion commander subconsciously denied this situation because it violated the laws of physics. Even if the light passes through the fleet, which is at least hundreds of kilometers away, but the white shadow didn't. This shows that its speed has exceeded the limit of the cargo ship's sensors and exceeded the speed of light. But it still has mass and can cause damage to surrounding things. You must know that this universe is not exactly the same as Chen Ming's previous universe. This universe has the law of mass void effect. That is to say, anything will lose mass as its speed approaches the speed of light in the normal universe. When it reaches the speed of light, it will no longer be able to contact anything. And this white shadow completely stepped on this law of the universe. No, there must be some reason for it to do this. In the face of spiritual energy, anything is possible. The Legion commander also quickly denied what he said. He was also a little excited when he saw such a special situation just now, so he blurted out the words subconsciously. After adding the variables of psychic energy, the existence of this white shadow is reasonable, just as far as he knew. At present, no one in the entire empire can achieve such speed. Even when Chen Ming and the president moved over long distances, they relied on the power of the spatial level to move in space, rather than accelerating to such terrifying speeds. The speed that can be expressed in actual combat is even slower. Although it is true that there is no need to increase the speed, we can still see the uniqueness of this white shadow. This thing is really beyond the cognition of the Legion commander. Although Bai Ying's specific situation is not clear yet, the Legion commander has subconsciously thought about ways to deal with this thing. Chen Ming on the side was not only concerned about Bai Ying's terrifying speed, he was also concerned about Bai Ying's size. Isn't this thing a little big? The Legion commander raised his head from his thoughts and glanced at the projection screen again, and said, "It's true." Judging from the trajectory of the Afterglow battleship being struck, the diameter of this white shadow may be as long as 3 battleships connected front to back. However, just looking at the picture of the warship sensor, this white shadow is only about the same size as an ordinary battleship, both at the 10,000-meter level. It seems that its cutting ability only has a wider range of action. This also further illustrates that its chopping ability is most likely related to psychic energy. The Legion commander stared at the projection screen for a long time and asked, "So what exactly is this? Is it a living thing? Or a machine?" Of course, Chen Ming didn't know what this thing was. He could only tell his thoughts. It should be a machine. I guess it should be some kind of psychic weapon. You see, there are traces of the mechanical clan on those Yuhui. The mechanical clan inherited many psychic weapons from Shining. They are the most likely to create this thing. And they do have a reason to trouble Sunset. The star map that Chen Ming showed them publicly some time ago suddenly appeared in the Legion commander's mind. The pressure as if the entire universe was occupied by the mechanical race suddenly weighed on his mind. Although the connection between the afterglows and different cosmic regions may not be close, when they unite because the mechanical race in an area has been annihilated, it is really hard to calm down under the pressure of human beings facing the mechanical race. If the machine race wants to target the Empire, there are many ways, and testing will obviously be the first step. It is a very reasonable choice to use the rebel AI created by humans as the test object. It seems that the arrival of the mechanical natural disaster that Chen Ming once said will not be too far away. If this thing is really related to the pollutants that Chen Ming found on Yu Hui's ship, and if it really comes from the mechanical race, then the Empire may suffer a lot in the next period of time. Not to mention development. Whether the Empire can be stabilized may be a problem. There was silence for a while. The Legion commander temporarily gave up his messy thoughts. He is one of the most powerful psychers in the Empire, and he commands one of the most powerful legions in the Empire. He couldn't be timid before fighting. The Legion commander no longer struggled with this issue and continued to focus on the projection projected by Chen Ming. But what type of weapon is it? A spaceship? Chen Ming is also thinking about this problem. I also suspect it is a spaceship, but there is not enough evidence yet, and more clues are needed. I'm still looking for it. While Chen Ming was processing the wreckage and extracting the data stored in it, the Supreme Point is still wandering in this ship graveyard, constantly collecting the wreckage parts of the ship that Chen Ming needs. Chen Ming needed wreckage, especially the wreckage at the edge of Yuhui's fleets. And it would be best if it was the wreckage of the ships near the position where the White Shadow just came into contact with the fleet group when it rushed into the fleet. Because of the relative angle and speed of the ships next to the White Shadow, their perspective could not capture the specific appearance of the White Shadow, and even the blurred appearance might not be captured. Just a white shadow, it was meaningless. But if the ship was near the position where the White Shadow was heading straight for the fleet, and it met the White Shadow head-on, it might be possible to capture its specific appearance. Chen Ming wanted to find a sensor in the wreckage that recorded the White Shadow at a suitable angle. But God knows which angle is the right angle. God knows which destroyed spaceship has such a record stored in it. Chen Ming could only keep searching and repairing. Soon, he was forced to expand the scope of the search for wreckage. Because there were not many ships at the initial contact surface between the White Shadow and the fleet. None of the wreckage successfully recorded the scene of the White Shadow rushing into the fleet group. So he could only choose to look for it in the ships on the slashing track where the White Shadow passed. The ships there might also be able to obtain similar picture records and find the specific appearance of the white shadow from different angles. This is very difficult, because the slashing does not necessarily cause the explosion of the ship's ammunition depot, engine, fuel depot, etc. Only when it happens to hit such a place will the ship be completely destroyed, causing the afterglow core inside to die along with it. Therefore, some ships on the slashing track are lucky enough to avoid this. If they are luckier, the afterglow core of the ship will also avoid those slashings. No matter how big the afterglow core is, it is only the size of a human head, and it is basically unlikely to be hit directly by the slashing. And these ships are damaged, but the afterglow cores that are not damaged are all unloaded, loaded, and sent away by the afterglow itself. Only the chopped scrap iron is left there. As a result, at this moment, Chen Ming can only touch and repair the afterglow cores that were blown up by the ship's explosion. The number of these afterglow cores is not large, and it is even more difficult to find a frontal photo that was recorded exactly at the moment when the white shadow appeared. But Chen Ming's luck was pretty good. After choosing to start with the warships on the slashing trajectory, after capturing the wreckage of the 13th warship, he successfully found the image record of the white shadow from the afterglow core that was burned inside. The image of the moment when the white shadow appeared was extracted by Chen Ming and put on the projection screen next to him, although it was only a short moment. However, it can be vaguely seen that this white shadow has a certain regular geometric structure. This further confirms the possibility that this white shadow is a mechanical structure, but it is not 100% certain whether it is a spaceship or a simple disposable weapon. After showing the image, Chen Ming asked the Legion commander next to him, "Can you see anything?" The Legion commander did not know much about ship repair and ship internal data extraction, so he could only watch from the side in front of Chen Ming, a professional. However, for more superficial aspects, such as the armament, structure, and combat-friendly design of the spacecraft, he has a lot to say. He looked at the still somewhat blurry image on the projection screen, thought for a while, and said, "This image is only recorded from the front angle of the white shadow, and there is not much that can be seen. But it should be certain that this thing has an asymmetrical structure." The Legion commander pointed to the left position of the middle of the front image of the white shadow and said, "This position should be its middle section, and it can be clearly seen that its right side structure is more prominent." Chen Ming also has knowledge of ship design. "I remember that the Empire likes asymmetrical structures when designing ships. Anyway, the spacecraft is flying in space. As long as the output power of the spacecraft engine can be evenly applied to the spacecraft, the impact of the structural shape is actually not great." Yes, but some of the Empire's spacecraft are designed with asymmetrical structures not just for aesthetic considerations. Many times, asymmetrical structures often have some special effects. I know this. The Conqueror-class battlecruiser developed by the Cinda Company impressed Chen Ming the most about this asymmetrical structure. It is this asymmetrical side structure that allows it to create above-average firepower of a battleship with the smallest overall ship structure among all the battleships in the entire Empire. The principle of Cinda Company to design warships while ensuring basic quality, reducing costs, and increasing production scale has been fully reflected. If this thing is really a product of the mechanical race, the Legion leader added, the mechanical race, or the shining civilization, has never pursued the beauty of asymmetry. They prefer insects. Then they created things with asymmetrical structures because such structures must have special functions. As for what it is, it's hard to say. Chen Ming pointed to the ruins outside the spacecraft and said, "I feel it will only be related to the ability to cut and the ability to blow up the spacecraft." The Legion leader nodded and said, "Well, that's about it. This is what I thought of. I can't see the rest for the time being. It's just a picture from a front angle, and it's good to see these." Chen Ming didn't ask for too much. He turned around and continued to control the highest point, looking for wreckage in the afterglow of the ship's wreckage that might record more white shadow scenes. It's a pity that his luck seemed to have been used up on the first piece of debris discovered. Supreme Point has been busy among the shipwrecks for more than an hour, almost investigating all the shipwrecks in the entire slashing trajectory, but has not found the next clue about Bai Ying. just when Chen Ming had even begun to consider whether to obtain the actual video of Bai Ying from the ships on the side that had a high probability of not being able to record the scene of Bai Ying by luck. The Legion commander suddenly received news from the front line. The reconnaissance fleet that followed the traces of the Afterglow fleet to track the central part of the Afterglow fleet and other fleet groups discovered the specific location of the evacuation fleet group of the Afterglow central part, as well as the traces of the left and right fleet groups. After Chen Ming learned the news, he immediately said to the Legion commander, "Let's go there first. There are white shadows even here in the rear fleet, especially in the middle part. If you continue to stay here and search, it will be a waste of time. Much time. You are the professional in this regard. You have the final say." Chen Ming nodded. It's quite comfortable to get along with the Legion commander. In many ways, it feels like working with old acquaintances, without the friction that occurs when working with other people. Even if it might be intentional, at least it feels good to him. Chen Ming quickly controlled the highest point and made several jumps, arriving at the coordinates that the Legion commander had just told him. Then he saw the giant cargo fleet spanning thousands of kilometers, and the wreckage of those escort fleets next to the cargo fleet group. Like the Afterglow rear fleet, the fleet here also lost all Afterglow cores, leaving the ship and everything in the ship to the Empire. Not enough people have arrived here yet. Except for the small fleet that discovered the fleet first, Chen Ming was the first to arrive, still relying on swiping the Legion commander's face. The highest point successfully entered the area where the central evacuation fleet was floating. Chen Ming did not rush to collect the wreckage immediately, but first read the contents of their databases from some nearby cargo ships. Still the same as before, the cargo ships here could not record anything. They only saw that the surrounding fleets were suddenly cut off or exploded. In the end, Afterglow unloaded all the cores and transported them away in a centralized manner. Chen Ming had nothing to say about this, and then controlled the highest point to conduct reconnaissance, scanning and capturing the wreckage within the convoy fleet surrounding the central fleet. After repairing part of the damaged Afterglow core and reading the data, he simulated the situation of the central fleet with a model spacecraft. With a more realistic picture representation, it can be seen more clearly that the situation here is almost exactly the same as that of the rear evacuation fleet. Bai Ying rushed into the escort fleet from a certain angle. All the warships at close range were chopped into pieces, and all the warships at medium and long distances exploded from the inside out. But there is one difference. That is, the fleet size of the central fleet is the largest among Yuhui's evacuation fleets, and it has the largest number of escort fleets. The number of escort fleets reached 23, distributed around the central cargo fleet, each with thousands of warships of different levels. And every fleet was torn apart by the White Shadow in an instant. Among them were many of Yuhui's capital ships, but they had no power to resist in front of Bai Ying. By connecting the white trajectories of different fleets being attacked by white shadows together, and looking at the time in the data read out after repairing the Afterglow core, it can be seen that all the resistance in the entire central fleet was eliminated in an instant. The speed shown is faster than that of the rear fleet. If calculated according to the formula of the mass void effect, the speed of the White Shadow at this time has turned its mass into a negative number. Although the formula doesn't seem to work this way, Chen Ming feels that this calculation can better explain the power of psychic energy. After all 23 Afterglow fleets were dealt with, the White Shadow that penetrated all the fleets disappeared near the central fleet. Went to. Chen Ming glanced at the star map. The rear fleet caused the situation that Chen Ming saw just now. Even the time when the central fleet was attacked was not much different from the time when the rear fleet was attacked. This White Shadow penetrated such a long distance in an instant, completely defeating Yuhui. The level of threat is evident. This is definitely not an ordinary battleship. Even a Titan-class battleship can fight against it. Only at least level 5 psychers can fight it, and they have to be the top ones. Chen Ming gave his judgment. It can only be said that if you want to fight this thing, you have to consider not only the strength of your psychic power, but also the strength of your mental power. No matter how strong the psychic effect is, it means nothing if you can't hit it. Only when the mental strength is high can the thinking speed be fast enough. The thinking speed is enough to follow the traces of the mysterious white shadow, and then to consider the possibility of solving this thing. The Legion commander traced the distance that the white shadow could penetrate instantly on the model created by Chen Ming. He slightly refuted Chen Ming and said, "I think it is better to be a level 6 psyker. In my impression, there is really no level 5 psyker." To this extent, Chen Ming pointed to himself and said, "I am actually level 5. Before he took control of the capital ship he built with his own hands, the basic strength of his psychic power had actually remained unchanged. What became stronger was the natural disaster core that he acquired and fused with all his power. Of course, the core of the natural disaster also contains his basic power. So if he takes control of the capital ship, then all of his power will be further enhanced. As for the specific degree of strengthening, it depends on how much effort Chen Ming put into that battleship." The Legion commander wisely chose to skip this topic to avoid suffering a psychological blow. However, he did not remain silent, but took the initiative to bring up the possible ideas he had just been thinking about in his mind to solve the problem of the white shadow. There don't seem to be many methods at our disposal to target this white shadow. Space ability should be the first choice. While Chen Ming continued to be busy capturing the wreckage, he responded to the regiment commander's thoughts. "Yes, so I have already told the president about this. But the means that can limit space are not limited to space psychics. Don't forget that I also have a corpse of a plane nightmare in a black hole. The black hole technology that can be researched on it may also have the same effect. Oh wait, I found a new picture." As Chen Ming spoke, he put a recorded picture of Bai Ying with a different angle than before on the projection screen. The first picture just now was taken from the complete front. This one was captured from a slightly right angle. You can see that the structure on the right side of the white shadow is indeed very prominent, as the Legion commander said when he saw the front view, showing a sharp diamond shape. Other than that, like the previous picture, not much can be seen. The Legion commander immediately said about this picture, "The mechanical structure of this picture can be roughly seen. It should be certain that it is some kind of spaceship, right? That's how it should be." Chen Ming didn't say much and continued to speed up the investigation of the wreckage. He wanted to find out exactly what this white shadow looked like. As Chen Ming's search continued, time also passed rapidly. The Legion's reconnaissance fleet has successfully discovered Yuhui's starboard and starboard fleets, as well as the earliest evacuated front fleet. Every fleet was the same. The escort fleet was destroyed by Shiro, and all the afterglow cores were taken away. Chen Ming went to each fleet, and after spending a lot of time, he successfully obtained pictures of Bai Ying from every angle, and built a model of Bai Ying. This is a very special spaceship. It has no exposed interactive devices, nor any weapons that can be used offensively. It has only one core, and 4 generally rhombus-shaped structures of different sizes extending from the core to the surroundings. Nothing else. This makes the overall structure look very asymmetrical, but also has a special feeling of unified style. If you just look at the appearance, it even looks a bit like a random drawing by someone who doesn't understand spaceship design. But when the real thing appeared, both Chen Ming and the Legion commander understood that this thing was a top-notch spaceship that was restored from something that originally only existed in theoretical science fiction. The strength of its psychic power is definitely more noticeable than its strange shape. And after checking all the evacuated fleets in Yuhui, Chen Ming also consolidated the information he obtained about the location of Bai Ying's path. He drew a complete route between a total of 5 fleets in the afterglow on the star map. The white shadow followed this route and appeared from the direction where Yuhui was going, starting with the forward fleet, then port, center, starboard, and finally the rear fleet. Penetrated all of Yuhui's fleet. A single blow penetrated the area without giving Yuhui any chance or time to struggle. How scary! Chen Ming couldn't help but say something. The Legion commander's echoing voice also came from the side, as well as his question, "Where did Bai Ying go in the end?" When Chen Ming heard this, he immediately drew a line on the star map. When the white shadow broke through the fleet behind Afterglow, the direction it left? Its empire. Chen Ming and the Legion commander immediately realized that something was wrong. They had delayed the investigation of Shiro himself for too long. The Legion commander immediately picked up the terminal, and then an urgent message came to him. The frontline command post was attacked. The enemy is unknown. Hearing the word unknown, Chen Ming and the Legion commander, who had just learned that the last direction of the White Shadow was the Empire, immediately understood what happened to the headquarters. Without any extra communication or inquiry, Chen Ming directly controlled the highest point to jump in the direction of the frontline headquarters. It took less than a minute to return to the galaxy where the headquarters was located. However, when Chen Ming arrived with the highest point jump, the sensor could only see that the Legion space station in the galaxy was destroyed, and the surface of the planet surrounded by the space station had narrow and long cracks that were almost all over the planet. The Legion commander had received some follow-up reports from some external fleets at this time, indicating that the culprit of all this was a White Shadow. Although the White Shadow appeared for a very short time, the damage it caused was very terrible. Not only what Chen Ming saw at this time, even the signal base station in hyperspace had been destroyed. The signal network between the front and the rear was cut off, and the headquarters had completely lost contact with the outside world. The Legion could not even contact the rear to provide reinforcements. This is probably the most urgent situation in the Empire in recent decades. Chen Ming was just about to explain the situation to the Legion commander, and each of them would deal with what was happening now. But before he could make any move, a white light flashed in his perception. The next moment, the highest point where Chen Ming was riding was cut apart by an external force. From the bow to the stern, it was cut into two halves from the center, and then it was cut into three parts in an instant by the subsequent slash. And this slashing force did not only act on the spacecraft, it also acted precisely on Chen Ming's body in the spacecraft. Chen Ming's body was split in two from the waist. This sudden attack made him fall on him before he even had time to feel the danger. Even the pain nerves did not have time to transmit the pain of the body being cut off to the brain of the body, and his body was broken. And the Legion commander beside him groaned, and the military uniform he was wearing was also cut apart in an instant. However, the Legion commander was not directly cut in half like Chen Ming, but the torn military uniform revealed a red mark on his skin that slanted from the left shoulder to the right kidney. The Legion commander's physical strength seemed to have exceeded that of the battleship. Although he was not really injured, he immediately realized Chen Ming's condition. His face changed, and he hurriedly asked Chen Ming, "Are you okay?" Chen Ming reached out to support his severed body to prevent the upper half of his body from sliding to the ground. He sighed, "It's so fast." Before, he felt that its speed was very fast just by looking at the images of those white shadows and the actual damage it caused. He didn't expect that this speed would be even more terrifying when he faced it in person. His thinking speed at this time couldn't keep up with this thing at all. He had to free up the thinking speed that was usually limited for the convenience of life and speed up his thinking speed to a truly ordinary level. Only in this way can he react enough. While Chen Ming used his mental power to stimulate his consciousness and speed up his thinking, he responded to the Legion commander. "It's okay. It doesn't matter if this body is gone. Did you feel it just now?" "I felt it. There was a psychic fluctuation, but there was no actual physical contact, and I just saw its appearance clearly." "Well, it's definitely a psychic spaceship," Chen Ming said and released a large amount of metal liquid to stabilize the highest point that was breaking like his body. Then he used psychic power on his body to repair it. But he suddenly found that the body tissue near his waist, where the white shadow cut him in half, became very shriveled. Whether it was the skin, muscles, or the severed organs, all showed this situation. Look at the Legion commander again. The clothes on his body that were cut also showed signs of being corroded and broken by some force. In theory, this kind of slashing that was enough to cut off the main battleship did not require any other force assistance at all. The slashing marks left should be extremely smooth, and there should be no such broken gaps. And take a closer look. On the red mark left by the slash on the Legion commander's body, a small layer of skin tissue has been separated from the body and was torn off by the Legion commander. Chen Ming immediately said, "The effect of this psychic energy is not only for metal products, but also for other things, even life. This doesn't seem to be a simple corrosion." "What do you mean? Are you talking about me? My physical fitness is too strong." When I get injured, the wound will be repaired quickly, and the skin tissue that originally fell off slowly over a few days will fall off in a very short time. So it looks like this." Chen Ming shook his head and said, "It's not just your side. I'm not sure yet. Let's see. There is a feeling that the judgment of the psychic effect is about to come out, but there is still something missing, and it is still impossible to make an accurate judgment on it. The Legion commander has no opinion on this. Sometimes wrong ideas may mislead others when they are spoken out, and Chen Ming's consideration is not a problem. And now there are obviously more important things. The white shadow disappeared again after just rating the highest point. But it is obvious that it still exists in this galaxy. Without waiting for the Legion commander to speak, after repairing the body and the highest point, Chen Ming said to the Legion commander, "I'm going to chase the white shadow. You go and see how the headquarters is doing now." "Good." The Legion commander did not feel any discomfort at being commanded by Chen Ming and immediately agreed. Chen Ming put his hand on his shoulder and used his spiritual energy to send the Legion commander to the headquarters on the planet. In this way, his attention can be fully focused on the white figure. At this time, the spacecraft sensors could see the white shadow moving back and forth between the planet and the universe, tearing apart the planet where the headquarters was located and also tearing apart the fleets between galaxies. The core of the ship with 4 diamond-shaped structures is like 2 sharp boomerangs intertwined, destroying everything in its path. However, I don't know if the Empire removed all the mechanical clan units, which caused the white shadow to be unable to contact the nearby mechanical clan. Chen Ming received the news from the Legion commander who had just arrived on the surface that the headquarters had not been destroyed yet. Obviously, Baiying did not attack the headquarters accurately, and for some reason, Baiying was not as fast as before after running back and forth between the planet and the universe several times. Even some warships could barely keep up with its speed and then tried to attack Baiying. However, the actual effect is obviously not at all. This white shadow gives people the appearance of playing tricks on the Imperial fleet. No, this is not teasing, this is testing. It has been speculated just now that this white shadow is most likely a spacecraft sent by the machine tribe for reconnaissance. We must test the Empire as much as possible. The content of the test will of course include the Empire's fleet, border defense, reaction time, combat effectiveness, etc. And assuming that the mechanical tribe has taken control of Yuhui, then the mechanical tribe will definitely be aware of the many years of war between Yuhui and the Empire. Then through Yuhui's understanding of the front line of the 14th Legion, they can learn about the Empire's information in disguised form. The initial test and the data summary before the test found that the Empire's strength was far lower than expected. In order to test out more possible hidden methods, it should be reasonable for the Machine Clan to proactively reduce its combat effectiveness. Chen Ming probably guessed the reason for the change in the white shadow, and he immediately had an idea in his mind. He couldn't let Baiying continue like this. Not to mention temptation, he didn't want to let it happen even if Baiying might cause any damage. As for the means to deal with such high-speed spacecraft that cannot be effectively pursued at all, the only solution is space capabilities. Chen Ming's spiritual energy was released. In the blink of an eye, it was spread all over the planet of the headquarters and the nearby large space environment. Baiying has already reduced his speed to a level that is enough for ordinary people to react with the help of the spacecraft's instruments and equipment. Then how could Chen Ming not take advantage of this opportunity? Following the path of the white shadow in his psychic perception, Chen Ming saw the right moment and distorted an entire narrow cage-shaped space. The moment the white shadow rushed into this space, it blocked its only escape route. Baiying didn't seem to notice Chen Ming's movements at the first time. It didn't slow down at all and hit the edge of Chen Ming's twisted space. After a brief delay, Baiying's hull twisted and deformed due to the distortion of space. That moment of lag made Chen Ming almost think he had encountered some new type of mechanical leviathan. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough to see that the white shadow's armor could even resist the power of space distortion in a short period of time. Fortunately, it is not so terrifying after all, and is still restricted in place by this space-distorting force. This allowed Chen Ming to further release his spiritual energy and distort the space within the spatial cage. The White Shadow battleship, which was still retreating, immediately hit the twisted space that was constantly compressing its area of movement. The ship's hull was once again squeezed by space distortion. But at this moment, Chen Ming suddenly discovered that the armor and structure on the front of the white shadow that had been crushed by space distortion had all been restored to their original state. The armor of the ship behind the ship that had just been affected by Chen Ming's expanded space distortion range was repaired almost instantly. This time it was not the effect of psychic energy, because Chen Ming saw countless extremely active nanorobots repairing Bai Ying's body. It almost made the repair efficiency equal to the efficiency of space distortion crushing it. It gives people the feeling that it can even endure space distortion and continue to exist. However, in the end, the efficiency of Bai Ying's nanorobots was still inferior to the stable and continuous spatial distortion. A large number of Bai Ying's hull structures were shattered due to the distortion of space, and it seemed that they would be completely restricted soon. But Chen Ming always felt that things would not be that simple. As his psychic energy continued to function, the structure of Bai Ying trapped in the twisted space suddenly changed drastically again. But this change is not caused by the effect of space distortion. It was a change that Bai Ying himself took the initiative to make. The original rigid materials of Bai Ying's ship structure were all converted into flexible materials, which flowed out of Chen Ming's twisted space like running water. After flowing out, the white image rushed out instantly like a soft white gel. In this process, those flexible structures returned to rigid structures in a very short period of time. It broke away from the limitations of Chen Ming's spiritual energy and broke away from Chen Ming's tracking. With such ability, unless Chen Ming chooses to tear the space directly and create a space fault, it cannot be restricted at all. But Chen Ming does not want to do the consequences of tearing the space again in a short time, in case the tearing of the space fails to successfully trap Bai Ying. Then Chen Ming will face two huge troubles at the same time. The only thing that can be said is that Bai Ying needs a little time to convert the properties of the ship material. Seize this opportunity, maybe it can be completely restricted to death. Of course, the premise is that Bai Ying will give another chance. Chen Ming looked in the direction where Bai Ying fled and disappeared. If this Bai Ying really came for a test, then it should be back soon. Chen Ming just thought so, and saw the traces of Bai Ying appear again in the galaxy. It really did not leave completely, it just circled back after getting rid of Chen Ming's control. Continued to attack the Legion fleet in the galaxy. After destroying a fleet of hundreds of spaceships in an instant, it suddenly rushed to the planet of the frontline headquarters of the Legion in the galaxy. And it attacked the headquarters with great precision. Chen Ming was just a little worried about the situation of the Legion commander when he noticed a grand and wild spiritual energy fluctuation on the surface of the planet. The trajectory of the white shadow that was rushing to the surface suddenly stagnated. The next moment, the white shadow was repelled by some powerful force and flew backwards. It formed a new trajectory that was almost at an acute angle to the original trajectory that attacked the surface. There was even a dazzling flame produced by the friction of the white shadow on the planet's atmosphere in the front part of this trajectory. It was not until the white shadow was hit to the edge of the galaxy that the flame gradually extinguished. It seems that it should have been stopped by the Legion commander. Chen Ming thought silently. The white shadow that was repelled to the edge of the galaxy turned around again and rushed to Chen Ming's highest point. The distance within the galaxy was nothing to the white shadow, and Chen Ming did not have much time to react. But after Chen Ming left the scope of daily life and stimulated his own mental power, his thinking speed returned to the normal thinking speed and even strengthened it. He had time to react. His psychic energy instantly created a distorted space near the highest point and created a new cage space at the same time as the white shadow hit head-on. This time, the white shadow was not fooled and just passed by. At the moment of passing by, a slight space fluctuation appeared inside the highest point, and a missile-like object the size of a person was sent in. Chen Ming instantly came to the location where the missile was dropped and reached out to touch it before it exploded. This is a large can-shaped object that flashes pink and purple light rapidly. It is also the missile dropped by the white shadow, and it is also the source of the destruction of the warships that Chen Ming saw. This missile is called induction air mine. which is not a pure psychic creation. It was just sent by psychic energy. Chen Ming is not in a hurry to analyze what the effect and principle of this induction air mine are. What he has to do now is to deal with the white shadow immediately to prevent it from causing damage to more Legion fleets in the future. However, the white shadow is more difficult to deal with than imagined. It brushed past Chen Ming's commanding point and left a considerable distance in a blink of an eye. Even if Chen Ming's mental power has spread throughout the entire galaxy, it is still difficult to lock its position in space. Moreover, Chen Ming currently does not have enough means to hook and kill Bai Ying with one blow while preserving Bai Ying. Using the destroyer may lead to Bai Ying's complete destruction, and there is no way to control Bai Ying to investigate what is behind Bai Ying. It can only be said that this is not a solution. He must find a way to give Bai Ying a final blow. Chen Ming thought about it, picked up the terminal, and contacted the Legion commander. Is there a way to kill Bai Ying? The Legion commander said decisively, yes, but it runs too fast. I can only stop it at most, and there is no way to restrict it. I will control it, and you solve it? Okay, take me over. Upon hearing this, Chen Ming immediately contacted the Legion commander with the help of the terminal carried by the Legion commander and brought him to the highest point. At this time, the Legion commander's appearance has changed dramatically. He is no longer an ordinary human, but has entered a mutant state. The Legion commander is indeed a psychic with a physical mutation. In the past, Chen Ming felt that the Legion commander's physique was a bit too strong. He had doubts before, and when he was chopped by Bai Ying just now, he was basically sure that he was a psychic with physical enhancement or physical mutation. Now he has witnessed the Legion commander using psychic power with his own eyes. The type of physical mutation of the Legion commander is a double biological mutation. Chen Ming learned this concept from Liang Fei. This double mutation is more powerful than a single mutation from the basics. It can integrate the advantages of two creatures and play them together. If Chen Ming remembers correctly, the Legion commander's double mutant creatures are Behemoth and Galatros. Chen Ming has learned about these two creatures from some places. Among them, Behemoth is not the behemoth in mythology, but an ancient dragon-like creature found on a giant habitable planet. It has black scales and sulfur-colored skin patterns, and its appearance is roughly that of a flying dragon walking on four legs, but without wings. In this group of creatures named Behemoth, there is often a psychic creature as the leader of the group, which has the tyrannical power to control fire and flesh. The combat power of an ordinary behemoth alone can compete with a destroyer, and a psychic behemoth can at least destroy a cruiser. Although it seems that there is nothing to say at first glance. But the current behemoth is the direction of the mutation of the Legion commander's psychic power. The strength of the creature itself has already determined the upper and lower limits of power to a certain extent. Creatures like Behemoth will obviously be better than other creatures after becoming the power of psychics. And creatures like Galatros have an ecological niche similar to Behemoth. It's just that Behemoth usually lives in groups, while Galatros usually live alone. It has snow-white hair and looks like some kind of humanoid creature, but its trunk and limbs are thicker, especially the forelimbs, which are so thick that they can almost support the entire body with the forelimbs alone. This kind of creature is relatively rare, and almost all of the adult individuals are psychic creatures. And the psychic talent of their population is usually closely related to energy manipulation. Therefore, their combat effectiveness is only higher than that of Behemoth. It is common for a single biological individual to destroy a fleet. You must know that even the single soldier combat capability of the Thorn Zerg can only be considered ordinary, and the real strength lies in the physical mutation type of psychic power represented by their terrifying reproductive and adaptable genes. Chen Ming can use it to give Whooping the power to explode stars. And the individual strength is stronger than that of the Thorn Zerg, and it can even be said that these two creatures from different dimensions appear together on a psychic. The final effect is extremely terrifying. In the Empire, there is only one physical psychic, the Legion Commander, who has reached level 6 and can destroy star systems alone. So at this moment, the Legion Commander looked like some kind of humanoid dragon-like creature. Appearance is not important. When Chen Ming himself made a mutant form for Whooping in the early days, it was even uglier than before. The key is that the Legion commander's form has enough power to destroy Bai Ying. Chen Ming no longer limits the scope and effect of his own spiritual power. He released almost all of his mental power and completely controlled the entire galaxy in his hands. And at the moment when he discovered Bai Ying, he stimulated this mental power that filled the entire galaxy, making the space of the galaxy close to lock at this moment. Let Bai Ying temporarily unable to move forward in this space. And at the moment when the space continued to flow, it distorted the space near Bai Ying. Although the distorted space cage can only restrict Bai Ying for more than 10 seconds or even a few seconds. But at this time, it is enough. The Legion commander in the mutant state was sent into the distorted space cage by Chen Ming. The corners of his dragon head's mouth cracked and opened nearly 100 degrees. The concentrated energy beam brewed deep in his throat and spit out a torrent of energy towards Bai Ying. The beam of this energy torrent is more destructive than the tachyon spear and more dazzling than the light of the stars in the galaxy. The extreme temperature flame dyed the originally dark background of the universe blue and white. The distorted space around made the blue and white flame like a vortex attract the attention of all the living people in the galaxy. But the real power is not the blue and white flame at the edge of the energy torrent, but the impact of the energy torrent in the flame. Bai Ying has no place to hide and is forced to resist this energy torrent. The destructive energy destroys Bai Ying's hull, and countless nanorobots are repairing the energy damage at an exaggerated speed. Gradually, the speed of the nanorobots' repairs can't keep up with the speed of the energy torrent. Bai Ying has no spare energy to soften himself and get rid of the restrictions of Chen Ming's space power. The armor of this Bai Ying spaceship was broken, and the core was directly bombarded by energy. Suddenly, the core was broken, and Bai Ying was torn into pieces. It was smashed into the corner of the restricted space created by Chen Ming by the torrent and bounced back by the edge of the space, flying everywhere. The energy beam ejected from the mouth of the mutated Legion commander slowly converged, and wisps of white smoke floated from the corners of his mouth. Is it solved? Looking at the scattered white shadow fragments, this thought popped into Chen Ming's mind, and there was also a trace of worry. This is just a test by the mechanical race, and it may even be just a detection spacecraft released by the mechanical race. There may be more powerful enemies waiting for the Empire in the future. Chen Ming was just about to unlock the restrictions of space and touch the broken fragments. The Legion commander suddenly shouted, "It's not over yet." The voice was transmitted through his body to the terminal that Chen Ming gave him, and also to Chen Ming's ears. In the cage area where the space was distorted, the shattered white shadow suddenly gathered again. The broken core merged together, and the fragments of the ship roughly reconstructed the white shadow itself. However, the white shadow suddenly split into two again, each taking away half of the original white shadow structure, and instantly changing and readapting the structure. In a blink of an eye, two smaller white shadows were formed. Their speed is even more terrifying than the white shadow at the beginning, even though Chen Ming has tried to impose multiple restrictions using distorted space. They also escaped from the twisted space like running water, escaping from Chen Ming's restrictions, and the direction in which they fled. Its empire.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.